Humanity finally won the war, but their last hero kneels exhausted in a ruined world. They had fought against the 6 great demon gods, terrifying beings who sought to destroy everything. Even the final one, the demon god of the ruined sea, was finally slain. However, this victory meant nothing, as the world had already been swallowed by its cursed sea of death. With humanity on the brink of total extinction, the sole survivor can only curse his fate. He looks out at the endless destruction, questioning a victory that feels exactly like a devastating loss. The other heroes are all gone, and even the legendary tower that sustained the earth has collapsed into rubble. All that remains is the toxic, churning water that continues to poison the land. He grits his teeth in frustration that the sea won't disappear, but is suddenly interrupted by a condescending voice. A man named Sunga appears, mocking him for acting like he won the entire war by himself. Suddenly, another survivor known as the Explosive Dog scoffs at his supposed heroism, and the Ice Dog joins in, accusing him of taking the easy way out during the war. But the last blacksmith roars back, reminding them they'd be dead without the gear he made. Sunga is left speechless, absolutely enraged by his subordinate's unbelievable audacity. The blacksmith then declares them the 3 dogs, a trio of infamous mercenaries who've come to pick the bones of the world. These warriors were notorious opportunists who sided with neither humanity nor the demons, their allegiance only to themselves. Driven by pure greed, the explosive, ice, and mad dogs only ever fought for their own gain. And yet, despite their selfishness, it was these 3 who somehow survived and contributed the most in the final battle. A wave of crushing regret hits him as he wonders if the world could have been saved if they had only joined the fight sooner. But now, surrounded by nothing but ruin, he looks at his bitter rivals and asks if any of them are even going to make it out alive. Mad Dog Sunga collapses, his organs completely crushed as he admits he's finished. And the other 2 legendary mercenaries agree, one suffering from an incurable curse, and the other with a pierced heart. But the blacksmith stares them down with cold eyes, sneering that they should have helped humanity sooner, as he bitterly condemns the selfish 3 dogs for only ever looking out for themselves. Suddenly, his eyes flash with a terrifying golden light as his resentment boils over into something else entirely. In a shocking twist, it's revealed the blacksmith is the one standing over their bleeding bodies, having delivered the final blow himself. He scoffs that they were a handful even in death as a strange power begins to emanate from him. With a surge of dark energy, he begins a mysterious process, drawing power from their fallen forms. The 3 strongest mercenaries of the era now lie dead at his feet, their life's work his to claim. From their legendary gear, he forges 2 magnificent new swords, declaring them to be his rivals' tombstones. With the blood of legends still on his face, the blacksmith's golden eyes burn with a final, desperate resolve, and staring out at the desolate wasteland, he wonders if his own time has finally come after a life of struggle. He clenches his fist, grimly deciding that this will be the very last time he performs this painful ritual. With a surge of determination, his hands clench as he prepares to activate a power he's never used like this before. Suddenly, a strange energy erupts as a system window appears, shockingly declaring he is extracting fate from himself. The process begins, pulling a radiant crystal from his very soul as the system struggles to measure his bond with his own existence. He holds the solidified essence of his own potential in his hands, a power known only as bond extraction. It's revealed his innate skill, blacksmith of bonds, allows him to forge powerful ores from the connections he's made with others. But when used on himself, the result is a tragic failure, an empty, colorless ore worse than common iron. Crushing the worthless crystal, he roars that if it contains nothing, then it will instead carry all the regret that has tormented his entire life. With a final, desperate roar, he brings his hammer down, beginning to forge his very regrets into a physical form. A terrifying wave of purple energy erupts around him as he questions the phantom sound of waves he has always heard. He realizes that this haunting sound has always accompanied the creation of his most powerful items. The hammer strikes one last time, unleashing a blinding pillar of light that signifies the weapon's completion. But as the light fades, he looks down at the newly forged blade with bitter disappointment, sensing no special power within it. He holds up the pathetically plain dagger, cursing its mundane form after such a monumental effort. Deciding he'd rather end things by his own hand than be swept away by fate, he steels his resolve. A grim smile crosses his face as he calls himself a madman for choosing to spend his final moments hammering away at an anvil. As his consciousness begins to fade and his body sinks into a dark abyss, he finally understands a crucial truth. All this time, the sound he heard wasn't an ocean, but the ominous whispers of the ruined sea itself. As he sinks into the abyss of the ruined sea, our hero is consumed by the crushing weight of his regrets. In his final moments, He wishes he had used his hammer for others, a single tear reflecting the dagger that led to his end. But just as his life is extinguished, that very dagger unleashes an impossible system skill. Return to origin. Suddenly, he's jolted back to consciousness by a voice he hasn't heard in 31 years, calling him a cadet. He finds himself in a younger body, completely bewildered as he's berated for zoning out during an entrance exam. Looking around the familiar forge, he desperately wonders if this is just his life flashing before his eyes. Then it clicks, he recognizes the system window as the exact one he saw right before he died. The impossible truth dawns on him. The gear forged from his own bondstone has actually turned back time. While an instructor gives him a final warning, he's completely unaware that this cadet is a hardened veteran from a ruined future. Grasping the hammer that started it all, he finally understands the miracle he's been given. This is regression. He wonders if, given this second chance, he can finally change the tragic future he failed to protect. But he quickly dismisses the thought, realizing that regret is a luxury he can no longer afford. All that matters now is seizing this impossible opportunity with everything he has. A cold, confident smirk spreads across his face, a look far too mature for this young body. With his eyes glowing with resolve, he makes a solemn vow to protect everyone he lost this time around. His first step on this new path is clear. He must get into the legendary Babel Academy, and the key to his entire plan starts with meeting the infamous Three Dogs of Babel. With a sudden explosive strike, he channels a lifetime of experience into the hammer, shocking the instructor. The examiner's eyes widen in disbelief, sensing a profound, unsettling power from this mere cadet. And with each deafening clang, the forge rings with the sound of a future being rewritten. The master examiner can only watch in awe, admitting the boy's rhythmic hammering is simply incredible. As the final product is revealed, he realizes this isn't just talent. These are the skills of a top-tier grandmaster. Just then, another instructor walks in, drawn by the commotion, only to freeze at the sight. Sehun holds up a blade of such impossibly high quality that it defies all common sense. The newcomer's jaw drops, unable to process that a mere cadet forged such a masterpiece. The examiner knows instantly that a true monster has just applied to their academy. But just as he's about to declare an instant pass, Sehun raises his hammer with terrifying intent. With a deafening crash, he shatters his own perfect creation, leaving the instructors utterly stunned. He smirks, knowing that this flawed piece is nothing more than trash to him. For a true blacksmith, presenting anything less than perfection is an unforgivable insult. The assistant instructor explodes with rage, accusing Sehun of treating the exam like a joke. But the senior inspector, completely unfazed, simply announces the cadet wishes to redo the assignment. The assistant, Han, is completely stunned and tries to protest this unprecedented decision. However, the inspector silences him with a single command to bring the boy more materials. He challenges Han with an icy glare, pointing out there's no rule against a second attempt. Terrified, the assistant immediately scrambles to fulfill the order without another word. With the interruption handled, the inspector turns his piercing gaze back to the mysterious applicant. He questions Sehun's logic, reminding him that only 40 minutes remain in the entire exam. He presses further, asking if destroying a masterpiece was truly the right choice. Sehun remains silent, a dark shadow crossing his face, his true intentions completely hidden. Sehun coldly declares that his previous creation was simply not good enough to submit. Intrigued by this unprecedented display of confidence, the inspector simply tells him to do his best. With permission granted, Sehun's eyes flare with a brilliant golden light as he focuses his true power. He knows forging perfectly is difficult in this weak body, with low mana and almost no time left. But his next move leaves the other applicant completely bewildered, wondering what he's even trying to do. The inspector watches in horror, realizing the boy is pouring mana directly into the explosive ignition stones. Without a moment's hesitation, Sehun hurls the volatile, cracking stones straight into the blazing furnace. The assistant freezes in sheer disbelief, utterly convinced that Sehun has gone completely insane. Suddenly, a cataclysmic explosion of rainbow-colored energy erupts from the forge, engulfing the entire area. Panic shouts fill the room as the assistant screams for a fire extinguisher to contain the inferno. The inspector calmly stops his panicked assistant, ordering him to stand down and leave the blaze alone. He then cryptically tells the boy to look closely at the flow of the flames, much to his utter confusion. Inside the forge, Sehun stands unfazed as the inferno splits into brilliant red and blue energies swirling around him. This is his hidden technique, the five-colored fire demon, a power born from resonating multiple ignition stones at once. It's a brilliant move that requires immense control but works perfectly even with his critically low mana. The other applicant watches in stunned silence, realizing the catastrophic explosion he expected never happened. Instead, the raw iron ingot itself begins to glow with an otherworldly, multicolored light, its very nature changing. The inspector finally understands Sehun's insane gamble. To alter the properties of the metal with controlled, resonant heat. This genius move drastically cuts down the forging time. But with only 30 minutes left, the clock is still ticking against him. Sehun begins to hammer the glowing steel as the inspector realizes that even with this miracle, he still might not make it in time. A powerful clang echoes through the forge as his hammer makes its first divine contact, and a confident smirk plays on Sehun's face. Knowing his impossible plan is actually working, he quenches the raw metal in the 5 colored flames, rapidly altering its very properties. Then with a swift motion, he pulls the now glowing, nascent blade from the inferno. But the immense strain is already taking its toll, sweat beading on his brow as he pushes onward, hammering down with relentless force, each strike shaping the future he's fighting for. Suddenly, a jolt of pain shoots through his arm as his weak body starts to fail him, and he realizes with a grimace that his mana has completely run out, leaving him without any protection. Yet even with his hand bleeding and raw, his grip on the hammer only tightens in defiance. As he raises his weapon one more time, refusing to waste a single second in this desperate race against destiny, he brings the hammer down in one final, desperate strike, pushing his body past its absolute limit, as the clock ticks down mercilessly, from 10 minutes to just 3, amplifying the crushing pressure with every second. And with trembling, bandaged hands, he carefully places the newly forged blade on the pedestal for appraisal. Just as the timer hits the final minute and the proctor's voice booms, calling a halt to the intense examination, Sehun lets out a ragged breath of relief, sweat pouring down his face now that the immense strain is finally over, and he clenches his fist, a silent testament to his unyielding spirit that refused to break under the pressure. Then the system declares the 5-colored fire blade complete, granting him the powerful new skill, Artisan of Flames. Immediately after, the appraisal results flash into existence, confirming the blade's quality is an astonishing high grade. The examiners can only stare in utter shock, one of them barely managing to stammer out the unbelievable result. But Sehun calmly tells them to look closer at the details, as the other proctors realize this isn't just a pass, it's a legendary performance. The examiner slaps his own face in disbelief, barely able to process that Sehun actually passed, until another proctor has to physically restrain him, telling the man to quiet down. Meanwhile, inside Professor Kim In-cheol's office, a serious meeting is already underway, where the professor stares down Sehun with an intimidating gaze, cutting straight to the point. He asks if Sehun truly believed the sword he submitted was worthy of his immense talent, but Sehun confidently replies that for now, it was enough. The professor can see right through him, however, noting the deep dissatisfaction still lingering in his eyes. He then drops a bombshell, bluntly telling Sehun he should withdraw his application because this academy is beneath him. The professor admits that while Babel's reputation is overwhelming, its refining department is a complete failure with no achievements. But Sehun's eyes narrow with resolve as he calmly reveals that he already knew all of this. The professor reveals a dark future where Babel's department is abolished and replaced by the legendary Vulcan Academy, but Sehun's gaze hardens as he flatly denies this fate, telling the professor he is completely wrong. With an overwhelming aura, he declares that the best institution will be Babel, simply because he is the one entering it. And as the academy looms in the background, he calmly repeats his impossible assertion. His words echo with absolute certainty, promising to single-handedly elevate this failing school to the top of the world. The professor is visibly stunned by this unprecedented level of conviction. As he stares at the young applicant, trying to process the sheer audacity of his claim, regaining his composure, he throws down a gauntlet, demanding Sehun become the top of his class, to which the boy agrees without a shred of doubt. The professor then tests him further, asking if he even knows the complex selection process for the top freshman. But Sehun, completely unfazed, perfectly recites the entire procedure, proving he is more than prepared for the challenge. The professor explains that Babel Academy is divided into 3 great faculties, each with its own prestigious crest. Within these are dozens of intertwined departments, creating a complex hierarchy of warriors, mages, and craftsmen. To become the top of a faculty is to be recognized as a peerless talent by the entire institution, a truly monumental feat. But despite Sehun's potential, the professor's scarred arm tenses as he prepares to deliver a harsh truth. He speaks not as an instructor but as a senior blacksmith, his gaze filled with the heavy weight of experience. He then warns Sehun that even if he becomes the best, Babel is the wrong place for a blacksmith, and urges him to go to the rival Vulcan Academy. This, he insists with grim certainty, is the only path to true success for a talent of his caliber. Yet Sehun simply smirks, realizing the professor is a decent man genuinely trying to help him, even at his own school's expense. Unfazed, the boy calmly states that the environment is completely irrelevant. He then declares with unshakable conviction that Babel will become the best, simply because it is the place he has chosen to enter. The professor smirks, mulling over Sehun's impossibly bold declaration. He admits that while the words reek of arrogance, for some reason, he doesn't hate them. With a newfound respect, the veteran blacksmith extends his scarred hand, welcoming the boy into his care. Their hands clasp in a firm shake, sealing the pact between the regressor and the master. Sehun grins as a system window confirms a level 1 connection has been forged with his new teacher. But his eyes flare with a hidden purpose as he secretly activates his unique extraction ability. A brilliant blue energy erupts from his hand, pulling the very essence of their bond into physical form. From this connection, he materializes a high-rank, fire-infused iron, a priceless resource stolen from thin air. Later that night, Sehun returns to his quiet, empty room after securing his place in the academy. He sits on his bed examining the stolen ore, his status window glowing with newly acquired skills. He examines the small, glowing ore, disappointed by its meager size for the effort it took. This is the power of affinity extraction, a skill that quantifies relationships to create minerals that shouldn't exist. But he realizes the bond with his new master is still far too weak to produce anything useful. Making matters worse, a glance at his stats reveals a disastrously low power level for an academy freshman. He lets out a frustrated sigh, accepting this pathetic state as the price he paid for returning to the past. Yet, his eyes burn with cold resolve as he forces himself to remain patient, knowing the long game is what matters. Because this time, he will have more than enough time to utterly annihilate the bastards from Pandemonium. The memory of his past life flashes before him, a world destroyed by monstrous demon gods as part of their terrifying plan. To stop that future, he can't afford to be picky, realizing he must first find a tool to protect his memories at all costs. With his mind made up, he reaffirms that the first step of his grand design entering Babel Academy is now complete. With his place in the academy secured, Sehun's eyes gleam with focus as he prepares for his next crucial step. Suddenly, a system notification shocks him, unlocking a brand new skill he never had before called Affinity Imprint. 1 week later, the grand halls of Babel Academy become his new battleground. Now dressed for his first day, he navigates the confusing corridors, searching for a specific room. He finally finds his destination, Refining Room 3, a place that holds the key to his future power. Confidently announcing his arrival, he pushes open the door expecting a simple orientation, but upon entering, he's shocked to find not just instructors, but other powerful figures already waiting. A condescending voice immediately cuts through the silence, mocking his relaxed demeanor. The challenge comes from the imposing Vice Dean of Borsippa, who glares at him for making everyone wait. Just as the tension peaks, an unexpected ally speaks up, calmly pointing out that the exam hasn't even begun. The Vice Dean fires back, claiming it's not about time, but about a disrespectful attitude. As his defender promises to handle him, Sehun realizes the refining department is not just struggling, but also at war with the higher-ups. He now understands why he was warned away from this academy, but his internal thoughts are suddenly cut short. The Vice Dean fixes his gaze on Sehun, a silent challenge hanging heavy in the air. His piercing blue eyes narrow, trying to intimidate the newcomer into submission. But Sehun remains utterly still, a silent statue of defiance against the crushing pressure. This complete lack of a reaction throws the Vice Dean off, who turns his head in sheer disbelief. Because Sehun breaks the tension with a clueless expression, asking if everyone has arrived as if he just got here. Without waiting for an answer, he casually starts walking forward, completely ignoring the stunned authority figures. He strides confidently to take his seat, leaving the fuming Vice Dean powerless in his wake. The Vice Dean finally greets the long-awaited arrival of the Academy's new dean, but Sehun's eyes widen in utter shock, recognizing a face he never expected to see here. Because the woman who just casually kicked him out of his chair is none other than Ryu Yuna, the new dean of the Borsippa faculty. While the Vice Dean has a complete mental breakdown over her bizarre entrance, Sehun is frozen in place. He remembers hearing rumors that she once worked for Babel, but this is beyond anything he could have predicted. He never imagined that this woman would be the one holding such a powerful title. She is the legendary S-rank hero Weapon Eater, a terrifying warrior who literally devours weapons to amplify her power. But to Sehun, she was once a familiar face from his past life, a longtime customer he knew intimately. And he remembers her tragic final moments, a defeated champion left broken and alone in the pouring rain. He remembers her final words, filled with regret for ever consuming his weapon. For in the pouring rain of a ruined city, the S-rank hero faced him in her last moments. Her head hung low, completely and utterly broken, while Sehun could only watch, a storm of emotions swirling in his own eyes. The legendary weapon eater was left powerless on the ground, a champion no more. Suddenly, his name being called snaps him back from that haunting memory, and Sehun forces himself to focus, pushing the vision of her tragic end from his mind. The examiners stand before him, ready to begin the final phase of the test. Kim In-cheol announces they only have 90 minutes, his powerful presence filling the entire room. The challenge is laid bare. Forge a weapon worthy of standing beside a sword, a true test of pure skill. Kim In-cheol adds a crucial condition, declaring they must use the advanced technique of alchemical smelting. He then gestures towards a large stockpile of materials provided for the task. The students are told they can use any of the common ores laid out before them, but the stakes are raised even higher when it's revealed their work will be judged by the legendary Dean Ryu Yuna herself. With the rules set and the judges watching, the examiner prepares to start the final test. As the exam officially begins, Sehun's gaze locks with a smug-looking rival. Sehun calmly ties on his apron, his mind already racing to decipher the challenge of alchemical smelting. But while he carefully assesses the raw materials, a condescending voice mocks him for just standing there. A dangerous flicker appears in Sehun's eyes as he turns, clearly annoyed by the interruption. He confronts the arrogant student, who confirms he was indeed the one looking for trouble. The examiner finally intervenes, calling out the arrogant student by his full name, Hans Barmut. He sternly warns the young noble to stop making comments completely unrelated to the exam itself. But as Sehun acknowledges the warning, a shocking realization dawns on him. This jerk is the judge's son. The pieces suddenly click into place as he connects the face of the vice dean, Michael Barmut, to the punk in front of him. Hans smirks, seeing that Sehun has finally grasped the insurmountable social ladder he's trying to climb. With a look of pure contempt, he proudly confirms his identity as the vice dean's son. He then lays out the impossible odds. A commoner ranked dead last in both background and mana versus a prodigy from a legendary family. Believing the fight is already over, Hans reaches into the bin of raw materials. He confidently pulls out a brilliant blue ore, declaring the results of this exam are already set in stone. Meanwhile, the judges watch intently, noting that he's chosen materials with an incredibly high concentration of water attribute mana. The stern judge Kim In-cheol points out the technical difficulty of smelting such a volatile ore, but the vice dean, Michael Barmut, smugly retorts that such limitations are a thing of the past. In-cheol clarifies that the real challenge is the brutal 30-minute time limit imposed on the exam. A sinister smile spreads across Michael's face, revealing this was his intention all along. He knows his son Hans possesses the prodigious talent to perform resonance synthesis in exactly 30 minutes, a feat so incredible that not even a second-year student should be able to accomplish it. Setting an impossible standard, the horrifying truth finally dawns on In-cheol as he realizes the entire test has been completely rigged from the start. He glares with pure fury, cursing the vice dean for stacking the deck so blatantly in his son's favor. Meanwhile, the S-rank hero and Dean Ryu Yunha turns her head, having prepared her own materials for Sehun, but her composure shatters as she sees what he's picked. A giant, clear mana stone alongside 3 mysterious crimson flowers. The judges sit in stunned silence, utterly baffled by Sehun's choice of the legendary hydrate and Hwahong stones. Michael Barmut simply scoffs at what he sees as pure arrogance, convinced the boy has overreached. Across the room, his prodigy son Hans narrows his eyes, watching his strange opponent with cold focus. As Hans begins his own flawless synthesis, he wonders if Sehun deliberately chose a conflicting ore to challenge him directly. He inwardly calls Sehun a fool, knowing a blacksmith with such weak mana could never hope to control the volatile Hwahong stone. A confident smirk spreads across Hans' face, certain that his victory is now even more assured. But suddenly, Sehun's eyes blaze with an impossible, fiery power, shattering everyone's expectations. A system window flares to life as he activates a mysterious skill that no one has ever witnessed before. He isn't forging the ore, he's engraving its very affinity directly into his own soul. As the Hwaham iron equips to his arm, a terrifying new power is born from a single, burning spark. Sehun stands confidently, his arm now a conduit of pure, blazing fire. But his rival Hans Barmut scoffs from across the room, dismissing this incredible power as nothing more than a cheap trick. Unfazed, Sehun focuses the swirling flames into the palm of his hand, and then unleashes this raw energy, bending the very ores to his will without even touching them. The volatile stones begin to resonate and spin, caught in a vortex of impossible power. A manic grin spreads across Sehun's face as he feels the elements themselves obey his command. From the judges' seats, the deans can only watch in stunned silence as the two prodigies display their overwhelming auras. Meanwhile, Michael Barmett calmly explains that this technique is suicide, as it breaks the most fundamental rule of blacksmithing. Forcing resonance with elemental mana is a surefire way to cause a catastrophic explosion that will obliterate the user. And a cruel, knowing smile spreads across his face, certain he's about to witness Sehun's spectacular demise. Michael Barmett remembers the last fool who tried this ending in a fiery, catastrophic explosion. Meanwhile, Hans Barmett unleashes his own impressive, but far more conventional, burst of forging power. But a sudden, overwhelming wave of heat from Sehun's forge forces everyone to recoil in absolute shock. Instead of disaster, the untamed flames miraculously converge, forging a blade from pure elemental energy. Sehun lets out a calm breath, the impossible task already complete with a faint, satisfied smile. With a chime, system notifications confirm his success. The weapon Hwajiokcho has been created. The smug confidence on Michael Barmett's face completely shatters into slack-jawed disbelief. His mind screams that it can't be as the system reveals a B-rank weapon born from a suicide technique. Even his rival Hans is completely floored, questioning how anyone could finish the synthesis that fast. Clenching his fist, Hans declares that what Sehun just did defies the very laws of their craft. Hans recalls the moment an arrogant blacksmith realized his fatal mistake as a mana stone shattered in his hands. The memory of this catastrophic failure flashes through his mind as he watches Sehun. Back then, a proctor had screamed for the man to stop, warning that imbuing elemental mana was suicide. But it was too late, leaving the blacksmith holding a violently unstable sphere of raw power. His eyes widened in pure terror as the energy inside began to spiral completely out of control. With a sickening crack, the overloaded crystal fractured into a million pieces before his very eyes. The stone then erupted, in a devastating explosion of pure, untamed elemental force. This was the infamous disaster that once occurred right here in the smithing department exam hall. All that remained from that forbidden technique was a floor littered with worthless, smoking fragments. And Hans remembers this tragedy all too well, making Sehun's impossible success utterly defy reality. Lee Sehun calmly considers how under normal circumstances, the evaluation would have a clear winner. Professor Kim In-cheol grimaces, knowing one of the two top prospects should have been recommended. But with a cold, unforgiving gaze, he dismisses the entire situation as nothing more than a pity. Meanwhile, Hans Barmett is left clutching his injured arm, surrounded by the debris of his catastrophic failure. He trembles in pure humiliation, having lost the entire competition by default. A subtle, almost imperceptible smirk crosses Sehun's face, hinting at his absolute control over the outcome. Elsewhere, an official argues the exam must be voided since a student was injured during the test. But Professor Kim shuts him down, stating that the result is final and blames Hans's own carelessness. The official glares back, accusing the professor of valuing results far more than the safety of his students. Furious, he slams the table, revealing the fastest resonance speed ever recorded is 5 minutes, making Sehun's success an absolute impossibility. Michael Barmett furiously questions how a mere freshman could achieve instant resonance, a feat unheard of in the Academy's history. But Sehun remains unfazed, beginning to explain the forgotten principles behind true alchemy forging. He reveals that the old way of killing the ore is fundamentally flawed, a brutal method compared to the masterpiece he created. The real essence, he lectures, is finding the ore's core and gently coaxing out its hidden life. Then he drops a bombshell, revealing this is a standard technique from a future he's already lived. Michael dismisses the explanation as utter nonsense, while Sehun internally mocks him as an old man who only barks threats. Convinced he's caught him in a lie, the official smirks, accusing Sehun of using a dirty trick. He declares it's impossible for a no-name freshman to create a rare-grade weapon, calling his cheat laughably unbelievable. Suddenly, Sehun's calm expression shatters as an overwhelming presence descends upon the room, catching him completely off guard. A mysterious new figure appears, agreeing that the situation is illogical, before effortlessly forcing both Sehun and Michael to collapse with a terrifying display of power. The official smirks, agreeing the situation is absurd, and demanding Sehun be disqualified for cheating. But he's left utterly confused as the department head completely ignores him, walking past with a determined look. She bypasses the collapsed men, her eyes locked on the one thing that truly matters in the room, Sehun's creation. With a sense of reverence, she picks up the strange, pulsating weapon from the table. The moment she holds it, her professional demeanor shatters as she whispers that its existence is completely unbelievable. A single tear escapes her eye, a testament to the raw, overwhelming power she can feel radiating from the blade. Suddenly, she whirls around and points directly at a baffled Lee Se-hoon, calling out his name with shocking intensity. In a desperate plea that defies all logic, the S-rank hero begs for just one bite, or even a single lick of the weapon. The other officials can only stare in stunned silence, utterly baffled by the dean's bizarre and unprofessional outburst. Her unique weapon eater skill has taken over, reducing the esteemed hero to a growling addict desperate for a taste of unparalleled power. Se-hoon's mind spins as he tries to process the bizarre and chaotic scene unfolding around him. His thoughts suddenly drift back to an event from his past life. That same afternoon in a downtown district, he remembers walking into a workshop with the cold confidence of a master craftsman who knew he was on top. As expected, the weapon he was inspecting was acceptable, but he could tell its fine-tuning was hopelessly immature. However, the true purpose of his visit went far beyond a simple weapon appraisal. He smirks, savoring the memory of watching Vice Department head Barmut tremble with impotent rage. But the name Barmut suddenly stops him cold, triggering a far darker and more painful recollection. The name echoes in the abyss of his memory, dredging up a forgotten tragedy from his first life. He flashes back to his old comrades, as Louise bitterly recounted how a cheap weapon she bought from a certain bastard at Babel suddenly exploded. With a cybernetic eye glowing with fury, she seethes over the permanent mana burns that ruined her body, cursing the man responsible for her fate. Se-hoon's eyes glow with a chilling realization as the final piece of the puzzle falls into place. The man who destroyed his friend's life, the blacksmith who left her with permanent trauma, was none other than Hans Barmut. His original plan to recruit his old comrades is instantly discarded. He now has a much more direct path to changing their fate. A cold, calculating smirk spreads across his face as a new, vengeful scheme is born. He understands that if he can just keep Hans Barmut in check, his friend will never have to suffer. Meanwhile, inside the Borsippa faculty meeting room, a furious debate erupts over Se-hoon's own future. The other professors are in utter disbelief, questioning the insane proposal to make him the top student. But Dean Ryu Yunha stares them down with overwhelming pressure, silently daring anyone to oppose her directly. One professor immediately backpedals, stammering that his protest was merely well-intentioned advice. Suddenly, Hans Barmut himself speaks up, condescendingly reminding the new dean of her inexperience. Dean Ryu Una glares back, her piercing gaze silencing the entire room. Hans smugly suggests they review the student's weapon more carefully, a subtle jab at her authority. However, another professor defends the decision, highlighting the weapon's incredible mana compatibility despite its crude craftsmanship. But a more cautious instructor pushes back, admitting that while surprising, he doubts the weapon is truly that special. Yunha then drops a bombshell, revealing the weapon is likely less than 60% of what its creator intended. She pauses, letting the weight of her next words hang in the air. If they still cannot accept her decision after witnessing Se-hoon's potential, she has one final, shocking offer. With the whole room stunned into silence, she declares she will step down from her position as department head. The scene suddenly shifts, revealing the world's history where 54 years ago, the heavens granted humanity the Tower of Heroes. But this divine gift came at a terrible price, unleashing the swamp of pandemonium and corrupting all of life. From this very tide of chaos, Babel Academy was born, the greatest institution in history, destined to forge countless heroes. The legendary Emperor of Ascension, Ludwig Schubert, declares that every student present will one day join those legendary ranks. He commands them to march forward, for it is the sacred burden placed upon all who enter these hallowed halls. As Se-hoon watches the old man, the Emperor's final words echo across the grounds. This is their undeniable duty as heroes. The sheer presence of Ludwig Schubert, a living legend, is enough to command the absolute attention of every soul present. Se-hoon stands with his weapon, looking the part of a decent hero, even though he knows the dark truth of his own power. Suddenly, an announcer steps up to the microphone, shifting the ceremony's focus to a demonstration by the top incoming cadets. As the top students from each faculty are called to the stage, Se-hoon moves forward with the other chosen elites. He can't help but remember his past life, where the arrogance of these academy prodigies never made any sense to him. But now, as the announcer declares the start of the demonstration, Se-hoon stands ready to show them what true power looks like. Lee Se-hoon smirks with a chilling confidence, realizing he finally understands the true nature of this test. As the announcer's voice booms across the stadium, dramatically revealing the object of their demonstration, a menacing red visor glows to life, belonging to a machine built for pure destruction. It's a combat automaton, a golem from the infamous marionette factory, powerful enough to challenge a C-rank hero, but Se-hoon sees right through the theatrics, instantly identifying it as an unarmed brawler type. With the stage set, the announcer calls for the first challenger from the esteemed combat faculty. Akalkuf's top cadet, Jake Myers, steps into the spotlight with an air of absolute arrogance. The chosen elites take their positions in the vast arena, separated by the silent, waiting golem. Sehun calmly recalls the rumors about Jake, an oddball martial artist from a family of renowned swordsmen. As the prodigy assumes his fighting stance, the automaton's eyes flare, signaling the brutal spar is about to begin. The announcer screams for the fight to begin, setting the stage for a brutal showdown. Immediately, the automaton's heavy fist rockets forward with terrifying speed and power. It brings down a crushing blow meant to end the fight in a single devastating strike. But the arrogant prodigy, Jake Myers, effortlessly evades the lethal attack with a slight smile. He continues to weave through a relentless barrage, making the powerful machine look clumsy and slow. Jake stays just out of reach, analyzing every single move his opponent makes. Then, with a confident glint in his eye, he declares that playtime is officially over. In a flash, he closes the distance and slams the once mighty golem straight to the ground. Channeling immense power into his fist, his eyes flare with a brilliant golden light, and he unleashes a single, devastating punch that shatters the automaton's face completely. From the stands, Lee Sehun watches this display of overwhelming power with silent intensity, as Jake's fist smashes into the ground to launch himself forward with impossible speed. A flicker of confusion crosses Sehun's face, remembering that in his past life, this so-called prodigy died as a mere A rank. Yet the boy on the field moves like a monster, delivering a devastating kick that shatters the air itself. This massive power gap leaves Sehun reeling, questioning how the future he knew could already be so wrong. With glowing eyes and a smirk, Jake declares the fight is over as he prepares the final blow. He then unleashes a single, brutal kick that sends the golem's massive head flying clean off its shoulders. The destroyed automaton head crashes to the ground, marking an absolute and terrifyingly swift victory. Wiping his brow, Jake just smiles as if he barely broke a sweat, soaking in the stunned silence of the crowd. Meanwhile, an official stares at his monitor in pure disbelief, utterly shocked by the power levels he just witnessed. The crowd is stunned by the incredible demonstration, a C-rank automaton defeated in a single breath. Another cadet celebrates loudly, hailing Jake as the unrivaled top student of his faculty. But the sheer power on display has put immense pressure on whoever dares to follow such a monstrous performance. An announcer then calls the next participant forward, Erika Inoue, the top cadet from the support faculty. Sehun watches with a knowing look, certain that for someone like her, this pressure means absolutely nothing. He remembers her as Erika Inoue, heir to a great noble house and a future A-rank hero with a mythic-grade weapon. But he also recalls her tragic destiny. A hero who became corrupted into a fiend and was executed by her own family. Knowing she's fated for a dark end, he resolves to stay far away from the walking catastrophe. Suddenly, however, a strange feeling makes him question what he's seeing. Because down on the floor, the woman who shouldn't even know he exists turns and looks directly at him. Erika faces her opponent, an automaton designed with 1.5 times the standard defensive power. The massive machine looms over her, its red eyes glowing menacingly as the crowd waits to see what she'll do. But instead of drawing a weapon, she calmly presents an ornate birdcage holding a single, dark crow. With her own eye glowing with an eerie blue light, she commands the creature to emerge from a swirling vortex of shadows. The bird is released from its prison, and its dark wings begin to unfurl with impossible, explosive power. A deafening caw echoes through the arena as the crow grows to a monstrous size, dwarfing everything below. Watching from the stands, even the regressed Sehun is caught off guard by this unexpected display. The colossal bird blots out the sun, casting a terrifying shadow over the now puny automaton. Recognizing the immense threat, the machine instantly raises its cannons and locks into a defensive posture. Sehun knows that even with its enhanced armor, piercing that powerful defense will be an incredible challenge. The summoner utters a single, chilling command to her creature. In response, the massive crow's shadow twists and compresses, forging itself into an armored knight of pure darkness. Its terrifying form solidifies, radiating a divine pressure that dominates the entire arena. The knight then vanishes in a blur of black energy, moving with impossible speed. It reappears instantly, unleashing a devastating circular slash that completely overwhelms the automaton's defenses. Even Sehun, a man who knows the future, is left utterly speechless by this unforeseen power. The automaton's core begins to crackle and overload, its internal systems failing from the single, decisive blow. Its chest glows with catastrophic energy, signaling a critical and imminent shutdown. With a heavy thud, the once mighty machine collapses to the ground, utterly defeated. The summoner calmly watches as her familiar, now a small bird of blue flame, returns to her side. The crowd erupts in absolute astonishment, hyped by the overwhelming power that just crushed a C-rank hero. But now it's Lee Se-hoon's turn, and he feels the immense pressure, knowing a simple display won't be enough. His name echoes through the stadium as the top cadet of the technology faculty walks into the arena's spotlight. Watching from on high is the demonstration proctor, the legendary Ludwig Schubert, whose judgment is final. Ludwig quietly remarks on the impressive freshman, but worries if a student from the refining department can handle such high expectations. Beside him, however, faculty head Ryu Ena sits with unwavering certainty, calmly stating that he will be just fine. The audience roars with anticipation, wondering if this newcomer can possibly top the incredible demonstrations they've already witnessed. Se-hoon stands firm in the center of the arena, his hand gripping the hilt of the weapon he forged himself. A system window instantly analyzes the blade, revealing its unbelievable stats. A rare grade, high, mid-quality armament. The other students are left completely speechless, shocked that a mere freshman has crafted an item of such impossible rarity. The crowd dismisses Se-hoon's weapon as plain, while a smug rival believes his own victory is assured. This rival is already certain the coveted position of faculty head is as good as his. But from the stands, Dean Ryu Yunha watches the unfolding events with an unreadable, intense gaze. Just as the announcer prepares a standard D-rank opponent, Se-hoon cuts him off with a defiant rejection. He then makes an insane demand to face the far stronger Model 8, and even equip it with armor. The announcer is left completely speechless, unable to process the sheer arrogance of the request. He realizes Se-hoon wants to fight a machine capable of withstanding B-rank heroes, a completely suicidal challenge. Panicked, the announcer accuses him of trying to ruin the entire demonstration with this impossible feat. Suddenly, a scarred man named Kim In-cheol appears, calmly stating that the requested automaton has arrived. Before them stands the fully armored war machine, its sudden appearance leaving the announcer utterly terrified. The announcer frantically tries to stop Se-hoon, but the boy simply stands his ground against the towering automaton. Kim In-cheol stares down the young student, silently gauging his impossible confidence. A confident smirk spreads across In-cheol's face as he makes a surprising decision. Instead of stopping him, he gives Se-hoon his blessing, telling him to go wild out there. Utterly defeated and confused, the announcer reluctantly raises his hand to begin the duel. With a final declaration, the demonstration officially begins as the crowd roars with anticipation. From the sidelines, Kim In-cheol watches with crossed arms, curious to see the outcome of his gamble. Meanwhile, Dean Ryu Yuna observes the scene with a cold, unreadable intensity. A wicked grin appears on Se-hoon's face as his eyes begin to glow, promising to deliver a hell of a show. He then draws his blade, unleashing a terrifying red aura as he prepares to live up to everyone's expectations. Se-hoon ignites his scabbard, unleashing a torrent of unstable, multicolored flames. He then dashes towards his colossal opponent, a mere blur against its immense size. From the stands, the students are completely captivated, calling the spectacle insane. But Hans Barmut scoffs with disdain, dismissing the flashy display as nothing more than eye candy. Se-hoon knows the truth, this raw power is so volatile it could destroy him without an immense amount of mana. So he uses his Artisan of Flame skill, injecting a pure crimson fire to tame the chaos within the scabbard. With eyes glowing a menacing gold, he confirms the injection is complete, his power now perfectly stabilized. Sensing the unprecedented threat, the towering machine instantly erects a powerful hexagonal energy shield. Se-hoon finally unleashes his attack, a devastating crimson arc of pure destructive energy. The scabbard's unique skill, Wildfire, erupts, triggering an explosion so massive it leaves the once confident onlookers shielding their faces in terror. Se-hoon knew triggering Wildfire would unleash the compressed fire demons from within the scabbard. In a cataclysmic flash of light, all that pent-up energy explodes at once, overwhelming everything in its path. The once arrogant Barmut brothers can only stare from the stands, their mockery replaced by stunned silence. Even the announcer is left completely baffled, unable to comprehend the monster standing before him. As the dust finally settles, Se-hoon stands alone amidst the devastation, his presence utterly dominating the arena. He calmly sheathes his weapon as if the world-shaking event was nothing more than a simple test. A bead of sweat trickles down his face as he lets out a small, almost amused sigh. Looking at the massive chasm now torn across the floor, he quietly wonders if he might have gone a little overboard. The announcer trembles, struggling to even get a single word out into his microphone. Finally, he shouts for the construction team to fix the wrecked hall as the evaluation is declared complete. After the chaos, the sharp click of heels echoes down a quiet hallway. Se-hoon waits patiently, summoned to an unknown meeting after his overwhelming display. Dean Ryu Yuna finally arrives, apologizing for being late due to the mess he made in the arena. But Sehun simply smirks, taking full responsibility and admitting he should have held back. The dean looks utterly baffled, questioning why he's even bringing up the destroyed hall. Now it's Sehun's turn to be confused, as he was sure this was a scolding for his rampage. She quickly denies it, insisting that the reason she called him is something else entirely. Her emphatic denial only deepens the mystery of why the S-rank hero truly wanted to see him. Suddenly, the tense silence is broken by a loud gurgle from her stomach, leaving Sehun speechless. Flustered, the mighty weapon eater can only clear her throat and desperately try to change the subject. Cutting straight to the chase, the dean makes Sehun a staggering offer, 10 times the market price for his work. She specifically wants his masterpiece, the 5-colored fireblade and its scabbard, a request that completely catches him off guard. As he stammers in confusion, a system window suddenly appears, announcing that an affinity with the S-rank hero Ryu Yuna has been established. She praises his incredible craftsmanship, while the system confirms their connection is now level 1. Sehun is internally shocked, realizing that in his past life it took several attempts just to establish this same bond. But his shock quickly turns into a confident smirk as he recognizes this unexpected event as a golden opportunity. Without a word, he activates his unique skill, Affinity Extraction, a power that materializes the bonds between people. The system confirms a massive success, as he pulls a special grade affinity from Yuna herself, an ore that can devour iron. A glowing red orb of raw potential materializes in his hand, the extraction now complete. The dean leans in, desperately asking if he'll sell this new creation. But Sehun grips it tightly and gives her a cold, one-word refusal. As Dean Yunha argues in disbelief, her meeting is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of a man named Kim In-cheol. The stern-faced official enters with a message, announcing that the chairman himself will now proceed with the ceremony. He then makes a stunning request to take Cadet Lee Sehun, forcing a shocked Yunha to reluctantly agree. Sehun simply bids her farewell, his expression unreadable, as he prepares to follow the mysterious man. The S-rank hero is left standing alone in her office, utterly defeated as the opportunity she desperately wanted walks away. Meanwhile, Sehun is escorted to the very heart of the academy, the grand and ancient Marduk estate. He walks silently beside Kim In-cheol through opulent halls that few students are ever allowed to see. His guide warns him to be on his best behavior, reminding him that the chairman has already generously overlooked the destruction of the entire auditorium. They finally stop before a massive, ornate door, as In-cheol explains that the man inside is on a completely different level from them. But Sehun just turns back with a chillingly confident smirk, telling the seasoned veteran there's no need to worry at all. Sehun steps into a grand chamber, where a powerful voice finally addresses him by name. He comes face to face with the legendary Chairman Ludwig, a hero who once fought a demon god in Sehun's past life. But Sehun isn't intimidated. Recognizing the immense presence of a true apex predator, Ludwig begins by acknowledging the impressive weapons Sehun showcased during the demonstration. He offers a backhanded compliment, noting they weren't perfect but made him eager to see Sehun's future. Sehun steels his resolve, knowing this high-stakes meeting is as delicate as forging a legendary weapon. Then, the chairman makes a stunning offer. 2 rewards as a tribute to Sehun's immense talent. Ludwig simply asks him to name his price, leaving the young cadet to ponder the unexpected opportunity. Without a moment's hesitation, Sehun boldly requests items to increase his magic power and memory, and with that, a pact is forged, a silent transfer of power that will change the course of his destiny. With a flash of brilliant light, the chairman's first promised reward materializes before him. 2 legendary items are presented, a supreme-grade heavy dark ink and a hero-grade dream ivory. Sehun is completely stunned, realizing these are artifacts most could only dream of obtaining in a lifetime. But his shock quickly morphs into a confident smirk as he already envisions how to use these impossible materials. The powerful Chairman Ludwig watches him intently, asking if the gifts are to his liking. Sehun confirms that they are perfect, his resolve hardening for the path ahead. As he walks away from the meeting, a hidden figure questions the chairman's unusual generosity. The mysterious voice notes that it's unlike Ludwig to grant 2 such rewards to a single student. Ludwig calmly explains that Sehun is the only one he's seen with the capacity to wield such power. And with a dangerous glint in his eye, he reveals he senses something far older and more profound hidden within the boy's soul. Ludwig admits that even he can't fathom the true depth of Sehun's soul. And back at the prestigious Babel Academy, the new day begins like any other. Sehun walks into his classroom, observing the other students without a word. While nearby, Hans Barmut casually mentions he has plans with the powerful third-year captain, shocking his friend. He smugly brags to his friends that it's just a friendly meeting because of their family's connections. But his boasting is cut short when Sehun interrupts from the doorway, asking if he could join them. A deadly glint appears in Sehun's eyes, as an immense pressure fills the room, and the entire classroom falls silent, as Sehun slowly walks toward the now frozen students. Hans is left trembling, utterly terrified by the monstrous aura radiating from Sehun's glowing eyes. With a confident smirk, Sehun tells the bully he's finally learned his place. Hans Barmut seethes in his seat, utterly humiliated by someone he considers a nobody, but his anger is cut short as the powerfully built instructor Kim In-cheol enters the classroom. With an authoritative presence, he confirms all the new students have finally arrived, and announces that their first class will begin with a unique kind of self-introduction. In-cheol then reveals a box of mysterious glowing ores known as projection alloy, explaining that these stones are hypersensitive to magic, as he channels his own power into one. In a burst of flame, the ore instantly materializes into a massive, intimidating black sword, and Sehun watches intently, recognizing the instructor as one of the world's top 100 artisans. But his sharp eyes see through the demonstration, sensing an immense, serious power that reminds him of another monster, as the instructor reveals the ore's true purpose is not to create a weapon, but to reflect the hidden depths of one's own soul. He reveals their task is to create avatars' weapons that are a true reflection of their very soul. The pressure mounts as he announces these creations will be displayed for all to see for an entire week. One student grabs the ridiculously expensive ore, realizing the immense scale of this academy's tests. Students begin their attempts, with some like Hans manifesting flashy but ultimately superficial weapons. But Sehun observes with cold disappointment, realizing not a single one of them possesses genuine talent. At last, the instructor calls out his name, and Lee Sehun calmly rises to the challenge. He grips the projection alloy, declaring internally that as the future top cadet, he has no reason to hide his power. A sinister, blood-red aura immediately begins to swirl around the stone in his hand. But then, a colossal pillar of pure blue energy erupts from his position, shaking the entire building. When the light fades, his simple, perfect blade draws a massive crowd, completely overshadowing every other creation. The crowd scoffs at the display, dismissing Sehun's simple, perfect blade as a ridiculous freshman fluke compared to the other flashy weapon. But even as they whisper, they can't deny the overwhelming gap in skill they just witnessed. Then, an official notice reveals the terrifying truth. Sehun's power was so immense it uncontrollably absorbed 19 other alloys into a monstrous amalgamation. His classmates desperately try to rationalize it as cheating or a simple coincidence to protect their fragile egos. However, one sharp-eyed student stares intently, her instincts screaming that this was a display of true genius. The academy's arrogant top student, Hans Barmut, smirks in agreement, recognizing the presence of a real master, yet the most chilling secret remains hidden. Even 19 alloys weren't enough to fully contain the sheer scale of Sehun's true ability. Suddenly, the instructor is slammed with a vision of a master's forge, where a hammer strikes with impossible, world-shaking force. He sees a young Sehun with glowing eyes, executing a perfect strike, timed with less than a 0.1 second error. The vision shatters, leaving the instructor utterly broken as he realizes there is nothing he can possibly teach a monster who has already surpassed the gods. The assistant instructor, completely oblivious to the monster in his class, casually decides to just pass Sehun over. But as soon as the room empties, Sehun remains behind, his focus absolute as he meticulously prepares for his real work. A chilling blue aura begins to swirl around him as he grips his hammer, channeling an impossible amount of energy for a single strike. He inspects the blades he's forged, but a sinister red glow flares from below, a grim reminder of the destructive power he's barely containing. Suddenly, a dark vision of his inner self appears, its eye glowing gold as it asks if he's just going to break everything again. Just as he raises the hammer for a world-altering blow, the assistant instructor's voice startles him from behind. The man warns him not to break the weapon this time, as it's a mandatory delivery for the academy. He explains that the academy's very budget is secured by the performance of weapons sold externally. The instructor then asks a piercing question, probing whether Sehun's dissatisfaction is with his body or his mana. With a weary but determined smile, Sehun admits that for now, his mortal vessel is the only thing holding him back. Trapped in his weakened body, Sehun laments his lack of stamina to even begin smelting the heavy rock. But the assistant instructor, overhearing his plight, offers a simple suggestion. He asks why Sehun doesn't just use buffs, a question that shatters his entire perspective. A slow, knowing smirk spreads across Sehun's face as he remembers this was a path he'd forgotten in his past life. With this simple shortcut, even his regressed body could temporarily wield its former godlike power. He humbly thanks the instructor for the revelation, playing the part of a grateful student. But the tables are about to turn as Sehun's expression hardens, ready to return the favor. In a shocking reversal, he critiques the instructor's own flawed technique and inefficient mana usage. Sehun stands with the quiet authority of a grandmaster, having just asserted his absolute superiority, and a nearby student can only stare in disbelief, questioning if a freshman just gave a lesson to an academy instructor. After a moment of reflection on his past as a blacksmith, Sehun's new journey begins, arriving at Babel Academy, a place of immense freedom where any class is open to him. But this freedom comes with a deadly price. 3 failures mean immediate expulsion from this elite world. Sehun boards a train for a surprising destination, the mysterious department of shamanism. As he steps off, he's immediately confronted by a familiar face from a life he'd rather forget. Her companions, however, are far from friendly, aggressively telling him to get out of their way. Unfazed by their posturing, Sehun coldly tells them that they are the ones who should move. His casual defiance instantly triggers the thug, whose mana begins to flare with killing intent. Just as fists are about to fly, the girl stops her friend, demanding to know what Sehun is doing here. He calmly reveals his shocking plan to minor in shamanism, leaving them completely speechless. To her companion's utter shock, the girl named Erica offers to personally guide Sehun through the department. She immediately dismisses her friend's reminder about a senior gathering, telling him to go on without her. His protests are instantly silenced by her ice-cold glare, a silent threat that stops him in his tracks. All the while, Sehun simply observes the exchange, his own plans already falling into place. As they walk away together, they leave her stunned friend trailing helplessly behind them. Breaking the silence, she finally asks what kind of miner he's actually looking for. Sehun reveals his goal is to learn about buffs, a strange and unexpected choice for a blacksmith. He specifies that he needs a type that enhances physical abilities without interfering with his smelting process. She then suggests barrier techniques, but he questions the choice, believing they're only specialized for defense. With a confident smile, she pulls out a mysterious grimoire, hinting that the true power of a skill depends entirely on its user. She demonstrates her family's barrier magic, weaving chains of glowing runes around a single object. With a confident smirk, she applies the spell to a sealed envelope and challenges him to destroy it. Sehun attempts to tear it, but immediately realizes the spell doesn't simply increase its strength. Instead, the material maintains its flexibility but hardens instantly when a strong force is applied. She proudly explains how this complex application is perfect for his needs, but is something only a professor could teach. But when Sehun seems strangely familiar with the spell, she offers an introduction to the professor who created it. Instead of answering, Sehun's focus shifts to the wax seal, a sudden realization dawning on him. In a flash of light, the ancient runes shatter, and the chains of the barrier are broken instantly. She's left completely speechless, unable to comprehend how he understood and broke her family's technique in mere seconds. And with a calm smile, Sehun thanks her for the worthwhile advice, his own monstrous power remaining a terrifying mystery. Sehun casually leaves to register for classes, pointing out the students who have been secretly following them. Her followers rush to her side in concern, but Erica is left completely speechless by what just transpired. On the ground lies the source of her shock, a shredded invitation to the legendary noblesse. She can only stare, remembering she was the one who gave him that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity he just destroyed. Their path now leads them toward the grand and imposing department of sorcery. As they walk the academy grounds together, whispers immediately begin to spread about the mysterious student seen with the esteemed Erica. But Sehun simply smirks at the rumors, knowing his unique ability would have already triggered if she truly had feelings for him. He reveals that before he can even join the class, he must first pass a special screening test. Erica leads him not to a lecture hall, but to a dark forest, the designated testing ground for barrier construction. Meanwhile, one of the followers desperately searches the same woods, cursing that he can't find what he's looking for. Sehun casually wonders if this test is just some simple treasure hunt, and as he walks with Erica into the misty forest, he dismisses the whole thing as a pain. But the moment he takes a single step forward, a massive, hidden barrier shatters into a million pieces before him. The instructors can only stare in utter disbelief, immediately declaring that he has passed the test without even trying. A voice echoes through the now silent woods, completely baffled by this impossible outcome. Meanwhile, inside the department of sorcery, Professor Robert Perry learns that the Academy's top student has shown interest in the Borsipa faculty. His colleague presents him with proof on his phone, revealing the true reason for her sudden decision. The screen shows a picture of Erica walking with Sehun, the mysterious student who has thrown the entire academy into chaos. This revelation only gives the professor a massive headache, as her involvement has caused applications to triple, attracting unwanted attention. But in the shadows, a far more sinister plot is brewing, as a dark figure with glowing red eyes mentions a request from the powerful young master Inoue. This year's test is the dreaded labyrinth of illusory souls, a barrier designed to trap even seasoned warriors in an endless maze of twisted land. The instructors explain that while it's a basic illusion, it's completely invisible to anyone who hasn't mastered sorcery. Yet somehow, Sehun shattered this complex magic with nothing but raw instinct, a feat that leaves the staff utterly speechless. With the first test unexpectedly concluded, the proctors announce that all students have passed and will proceed to the next stage. A cocky, red-haired student immediately steps forward, confidently declaring he will take the second test first. He sees this as a golden opportunity to impress Erika, completely oblivious to the monstrous power lurking in the man standing right beside her. The second test is revealed to be a far more delicate challenge: dismantle a complex magical barrier without destroying its intricate mana flow. As the student places his hand on the glowing web, he realizes he's facing a spider-type barrier with a sentient core at its center. The true horror of the test becomes clear, as the mana spider endlessly flees and regenerates, making a direct approach completely impossible. And just moments later, the arrogant student finds himself overwhelmed, his mana reserves proving totally insufficient to even attempt the textbook solution. Desperate, the arrogant student decides to overwhelm the mana spider with pure speed. But after more than 2 grueling minutes, his attempt ends in utter failure, leaving him gasping on the floor. Humiliated, he can only offer a weak thanks for a pity compliment as the girl he tried to impress looks on impassively. One by one, the other students try their hand, only to be met with the same crushing defeat against the impossible barrier. The proctor coldly announces that all who failed will be relegated to the beginner class, a harsh reality for the aspiring heroes. Then, a new name is called, and the quiet girl, Erika, steps forward into the spotlight. With a calm and focused gaze, she is given the signal to begin the test that has stumped everyone. She simply points a single finger towards the complex magical web, its energy beginning to ripple around her. In an instant, a wave of power surges through the intricate red mana lines of the barrier. The entire structure shatters into nothingness, leaving the other students speechless at her unbelievable speed and precision. Dean Ryu Yunha watches intently, acknowledging the overwhelming power of the faculty's top student. But the proctor critiques the 2-2-second clear time, noting a standard method would have been faster. With Erika's test concluded, the instructor's stern gaze finally lands on the last participant, Lee Sehun. Sehun steps forward, seeing nothing special about the barrier and deciding to analyze its hidden nature himself. Instead of attacking, he bizarrely kneels down to inspect the glowing magical threads on the ground. The other students are completely baffled by his actions, wondering if he even knows the test has begun. But Sehun's eyes gleam with understanding as he recognizes the barrier's properties are similar to heavyweight ore. He realizes its secret lies in its self-repairing nature, a flaw only a blacksmith would know how to exploit. The proctor stares in disbelief, utterly confused about what on earth the boy is doing just sitting there. Just as he's about to intervene, Erika calmly tells him to stand down and let Sehun continue. The proctor watches in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what Sehun is even doing. But the boy isn't just sitting there. He channels his unique flame, manipulating the magical threads of the barrier itself. As the other students look on in total confusion, the fiery circle around him slowly begins to die down. With a quiet finality, he places his hand on the ground, declaring the job is finished. A smug grin spreads across his face, knowing he's not only passed the test but also created a way to refine the heavyweight ore. He rises to his feet as the last of the magical flames completely extinguish around him. Now standing tall, he turns to face the stunned onlookers with an air of absolute confidence. The timekeeper stares at his stopwatch in disbelief, announcing a time of just under 8 minutes. Yet the instructor knows the time is irrelevant, realizing Sehun could now destroy the same barrier in seconds. Because he didn't just break the barrier, he created a formula to destroy the sorcery formula, a feat that should be completely impossible. The proctor watches in awe while Erika quietly observes the impossible feat he just accomplished. He knows if this boy adds sorcery to his skills, the items he creates will defy all logic. Meanwhile, an administrator sends out an email for Sehun's special request, wondering who will bother showing up. But his chat immediately explodes, with responses from high-ranking professors, all eager to supervise the prodigy. The only faction that remains silent is that of Vice Dean Michael, whose son was just humiliated. He's about to start sorting through the applicants when a new notification stops him dead in his tracks. The message is unbelievable. The department head herself will personally oversee Sehun's next test. Back in the workshop, Sehun is caught off guard by the unexpected, high-profile visitor who just arrived. It's none other than Ryu Yunha, the S-rank weapon eater, here to personally verify his monstrous talent. With the legendary hero watching his every move, Sehun begins smelting the impossible dark, heavy stone. He begins the legendary Dark Veil method, a technique deemed nearly impossible for most blacksmiths. With steady hands, he submerges the raw, dark, heavy stone into a specialized solution completely devoid of light. Using nothing but raw mana, he dissolves the stone, separating its impurities in a swirling vortex of energy. This isn't just purification. It's a godlike feat of restructuring matter on a fundamental level. Even the S-rank hero Ryu Yunha is visibly stunned, realizing she's witnessing a generational talent. After pushing the material to its absolute limit, Sehun withdraws the perfectly refined core. But the test is far from over as he moves to step 2, summoning a crimson flame into his hand. A massive inferno erupts around him, the sheer power shocking Yuna for a second time. With intense focus, he begins meticulously picking out the perfect sparks from within the raging blaze. The chaotic flames suddenly stabilize into a legendary guardian wildfire, a power that shouldn't exist in a student. He begins the third step, hammering the stone with his flame-coated weapon to erase every last trace of distortion. Even the S-rank hero, Yuna, who is completely immune to fire, feels the searing pain radiating from his work. She can only wonder how much he's been pushing himself as he hammers relentlessly amidst a blinding green light. The rhythmic sound of his work echoes across the entire academy, a constant beat of impossible creation. Hours bleed into one another, and Yunha can't even hold back a yawn from the sheer exhaustion of just watching him. Her initial shock slowly turns into a profound respect for the boy's inhuman dedication. A staggering 4 hours have passed, yet Sehun's grip on his hammer hasn't faltered for a single moment. Finally, the dark stone absorbs the last of the legendary flames, its very properties beginning to warp and change. As the last impurities melt away, the distortion stops, leaving behind a perfectly formed, impossible material. Without a second of rest, he immediately moves to the next phase, melting the stone to begin the true crafting. Instead of forging, Sehun begins casting the molten darkness, a choice that leaves the S-rank hero Yuna utterly baffled. She can only watch in confusion as he completes the unorthodox process, wondering what kind of mad plan is unfolding before her eyes. But then, his eyes flare with golden light as he executes the impossible, using a barrier-breaking formula to forcefully embed a mana circuit into the very essence of the stone. The mold violently shatters, and a system message declares the birth of a brand new piece of equipment, the Dark Spider Bracelet. Exhausted but victorious, Sehun takes a breath, as he not only finishes the item, but also acquires a new skill in the process. The bracelet itself is a rare, mid-grade artifact capable of absorbing its user's mana to unleash a devastating skill called Explosive Ring. Just as he declares his success, an unexpected, rumbling sound fills the silent workshop, drawing his attention. The source is none other than Dean Yuna, who freezes in place, completely mortified as her own body betrays her composure. A subtle, knowing smile crosses Sehun's face as he instantly understands the embarrassing situation. Trying to save face, Yunha desperately asks if she just experienced a resonance phenomenon from the item's creation, to which Sehun simply plays along. Sehun considers the newly forged bracelets, knowing that while individually weak, they could unlock a devastating set effect. As a gesture of goodwill, he offers Dean Yuna a mysterious container, apologizing that he can't give her the equipment just yet. The moment she accepts it, her unique skill, the legendary Dragon Soul Furnace, instinctively activates in response to the contents. To Sehun's surprise, she finds the strange material quite edible after a cautious taste. She even thoughtfully compares the flavor to fried tempura crumbs, a taste she clearly enjoys. Sehun smirks to himself, realizing he's already learning to cater to the S-rank hero's unique palate. He sees this as a golden opportunity, confidently thinking this will make it easy to raise her affinity level. But Yunha's focus quickly shifts back to the powerful artifacts on the table, finding it hard to enjoy a snack in their presence. Getting straight to business, she immediately asks when he plans on processing the other rare materials in his possession. Sehun then shatters her expectations, calmly stating he has no intention of selling them right now, leaving the dean utterly speechless. Sehun calmly explains he's saving the materials for the upcoming subjugation class, adding that making her wait will only make the reward sweeter. Intrigued by his confidence, the S-rank dean agrees to his terms, promising to eagerly await whatever he creates for her. With their business concluded for now, Yunha prepares to leave the workshop. But as she turns to go, Sehun admits the forging process has left him completely drained of all his strength. Suddenly, his body gives out and he collapses forward, the immense strain finally catching up to him. Yunha catches him just in time, her professional demeanor replaced by genuine concern as he brushes it off as a simple mistake in stamina management. Taking charge, she offers to escort him back to his dorm, casually asking if he has a fear of heights. A sly grin spreads across Sehun's face as he begins to deny any such fear. But before he can even finish his sentence, the S-rank dean effortlessly sweeps him into her arms, leaving him utterly bewildered. Without a moment's hesitation, she leaps from the high window, shattering the ground below as they blast off into the sky. Soaring through the sky, Dean Yunha is stunned by the immense power she can draw from the mold Sehun created. In her arms, Sehun smirks with satisfaction, realizing just how much his regression has already altered the future. As they streak across the night like a comet, a lone figure from the Uruk faculty watches their flight from the academy grounds below. It's Erica, the top freshman, anxiously clutching an invitation she must deliver to Sehun personally. Her long vigil, however, has drawn unwanted attention, sparking a viral post on the school's bulletin board questioning her strange behavior. But suddenly, mysterious anonymous comments flood the thread, demanding the post be taken down immediately. The next day in class, Sehun glances at the commotion on his phone before casually dismissing it, figuring if it's important, they'll find him again. At that very moment, the classroom door is violently thrown open, demanding everyone's attention. A powerfully built man in a red bandana strides in, introducing himself as their new instructor, Ricaros Miles. Without another word, he announces their first lesson is a brutal race to the training center, and the last to arrive faces a grueling punishment. The instructor's single word sends the entire class scrambling into a frantic race down the hall. But Sehun can't hide his annoyance, wondering why a simple theory class has suddenly become a brutal physical trial. With no other choice, he grits his teeth and joins the desperate sprint through the academy's corridors, pushing himself forward even as his classmates cry out in exhaustion around him. Finally arriving at the training grounds, the last-place students are immediately hit with their punishment. 20 laps. While the others collapse, Sehun reluctantly accepts his fate and prepares to start the grueling run. His stamina is already at rock bottom, and he begins to question if the secret forging he'd performed left him too weak for this. After the brutal warm-up, Ricaros gathers the weary students, his expression turning deadly serious. He reveals that the entire curriculum has been changed to combat a terrifying new threat that has recently emerged. A new enemy known as the Yomdo Hunters, ruthless assassins targeting any blacksmith capable of forging hero-grade fire swords, a direct threat to Sehun's very existence. Sehun listens intently as the instructor explains that no matter what gear they equip, their own body is the final line of defense. And while the other students roar in agreement, Sehun knows he has to take this to a whole new level. So as Ricaros announces the start of sword training, Sehun suddenly breaks from the group, deciding he needs to be far more careful this time. He pushes himself to run, knowing he must first raise his abysmal stamina to survive the coming dangers. The secret to his plan is a bracelet he forged himself, an item that secretly increases his stats and grants him the power of gravity manipulation. But his desperate training is cut short when Ricaros furiously orders him to stop running and return to the group. Suddenly, with a burst of power, Sehun collapses to the ground, utterly exhausted but having just pushed past his physical limits. Ricaros approaches the kneeling Sehun, noting with surprise that his physical condition is far better than he expected. He then tosses a sword to Sehun, demanding to see if his swordsmanship is even remotely suitable for the trials ahead. Sehun grips the weapon, realizing that the gravity-increasing ring he wears will make even a simple swing a monumental challenge. Sehun decides to use a forgotten technique, lunging forward to meet his instructor's blade head-on. Meanwhile, the other students mock his slow, sluggish movements, completely underestimating his true power. But Ricaros sees something they don't, recognizing the magnificent, perfect path of Sehun's blade. He dismisses Sehun as too hasty, easily pushing him back and telling him to just accept defeat. But Sehun's eyes glow with borrowed power as he recalls the memory of a true master's flawless swordsmanship. In an instant, the tables turn as Sehun's blade stops perfectly at his instructor's throat, freezing him in place. The powerful instructor is left completely stunned, wondering how a mere student could intimidate him to the point of delusion. With a single bead of sweat rolling down his face, Ricaros demands to know who taught him this impossible sword style. Sehun remains silent, the weight of his past life and lost comrades flashing through his mind. He then looks up in a cold sweat, realizing with dawning horror that this simple technique was never meant to be this powerful. In a flash, Sehun recalls the drunken old man from his past life, who offered to teach him instead of taking his money. Back in the present, He gives his instructor a ridiculous excuse, claiming he learned everything just by watching videos online. But Ricaro sees the raw talent underneath and asks if Sehun is finally ready to learn swordsmanship for real. That very afternoon, he's given a recommendation to a special lecture at the prestigious anicap building. Sehun is left completely stunned, a cold sweat breaking out as he realizes the gravity of this opportunity. Yet when he arrives, he finds the professor violently beating a student while screaming that he has nothing to teach. This enraged instructor is none other than the legendary retired S-rank hero, the sword-breaking Ma Guangsu. Sehun is frozen in shock, connecting this legendary figure to the drunken, gambling-addicted old man he once knew. He steps into the tense room and calmly introduces himself as a forging student sent by Professor Ricaros. The professor freezes at the mention of that name, just as the beaten student recognizes Sehun as this year's top prospect. Sehun assesses the volatile professor, knowing this situation is far more dangerous than it looks. The sword-breaking hero then points at the beaten student, giving Sehun an impossible ultimatum: defeat him, and he'll be accepted. The rules are brutally simple: a sudden death match where the first clean hit secures an instant victory. With a condescending look, Ma Guangsu raises his hand to signal the start of the duel. The moment his hand drops, the arrogant student Hans lunges forward with explosive speed, aiming for a quick finish. But Sehun remains perfectly still, his grip tightening on a simple wooden sword as his focus becomes absolute. The professor watches intently, wondering if Sehun is using a legendary technique to relax his body for maximum flexibility. Believing he's figured out the trick, Hans foolishly shifts his attack from a strike to a grapple. Ma Guangsu can only smirk in annoyance, realizing the fight is already being decided by Sehun's clever mind games. In a shocking reversal, Sehun drops low and sweeps his opponent's legs, completely upending the one-sided assault. Seizing the opening, Sehun twists his opponent's arm with overwhelming force, and he grits his teeth as an unfamiliar power surges through him, raw and uncontrollable. But before Hans can even react, he's sent flying through the air in a brutal takedown. As the secret to this impossible strength is revealed, a glowing bracelet pulsing with the power of explosive gravity. The arrogant student slams into the hard floor, the duel seemingly over in an instant, yet the immense recoil from the powerful artifact sends Sehun crashing to the ground right alongside him. Dazed and confused, Hans pushes himself up, refusing to accept his sudden defeat. But his body gives out as his vision blurs, the sheer impact having done far more damage than he realized. Lying on his back with a victorious smirk, Sehun smugly asks if he was perhaps a bit too fast for him. The professor can only watch the aftermath, stunned by the hidden power Sehun just unleashed in that single, decisive attack. Professor Ma Guangsu intervenes, ordering everyone out and reminding the defeated Hans that he only promised to teach the winner. But with a sly grin, Sehun suggests that since he was the one who landed the hit, perhaps the professor should be teaching him instead. The professor seizes the opportunity to humiliate Hans, pointing out the scandal of the top student being beaten by a mere Borsippa cadet. Taking the criticism to heart, Hans declares that he must become strong enough to earn his keep and makes a bold request. His entire demeanor shifts to pure joy when the professor agrees to train him, promising to set a time for their lesson. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Hans gives a deep, formal bow before being dismissed from the room. With the room now empty, the professor reveals he has something private to discuss specifically with Sehun. In a private training hall, Ma Guangsu hands Sehun a sword, demanding to see the legendary technique he supposedly used on Ricaros. Sehun's eyes flash with a golden light as he prepares to unleash a power that shouldn't belong to a mere student. He executes the technique in a blinding flash, a move that the S-rank hero immediately recognizes relies entirely on the element of surprise. The S-rank hero dismisses Sehun's technique as sloppy, a cheap trick that becomes a liability after a single use. Sehun cheekily reminds the fuming professor that he was the one who taught him this so-called garbage in his past life. But with unwavering confidence, Sehun declares he will forge the perfect body to master this bare-bones style. He then pivots the conversation, asking if his class registration is confirmed, leaving the professor momentarily baffled. With his objective achieved, Sehun gives a polite bow and takes his leave for the day. The professor watches him go, a smirk forming as he acknowledges the boy's incredible audacity. As he leaves the building, however, he's suddenly chased down by Hans Barmut, the very student he previously humiliated. To Sehun's surprise, Hans isn't angry, but instead cheerfully asks why he's still around. The elite student then presents him with a mysterious black envelope sealed with crimson wax. This is no ordinary letter, but an invitation to the noblesse, a secret society of elites, and it seems Erica was the one pulling the strings. Hans pitches the secret society as a perfect opportunity, but Sehun is hesitant to join a nest of arrogant elites. However, the elite student's disarming smile reveals the invitation is also a genuine thank you for getting him into a coveted class. Seeing his sincerity, Sehun finally accepts the mysterious black card, securing a powerful new connection. He then walks off, his mind already set on his next objective, enrolling in a minor from the notorious Borsippa faculty. As if guided by fate, he bumps directly into a mysterious woman, while lost in thoughts of enchanting and alchemy. She apologizes but suddenly grabs his arm with surprising force, catching the regressor completely off guard. Sehun's eyes narrow with suspicion, realizing this chance encounter feels anything but accidental. But her gaze is locked onto his wrist, her eyes shining with an expert's curiosity, as she asks if he crafted the unique item himself. Instead of answering, he seizes control of the situation, grabbing her hand and challenging her with a confident stare. Her expression immediately shifts into a predatory grin as she offers to enchant it, a system window suddenly revealing her hidden name, Leah Claudel. The system reveals her true identity as Leah Claudel, the legendary genius who once revolutionized the entire enchanting industry. She was the one who famously shattered all limits by enchanting a rare-grade item made from notoriously difficult heavyweight ore. Now, holding Sehun's bracelet, she is utterly captivated, lost in a trance as she weighs the limitless enchanting formulas she could apply. While she spirals into a frantic dilemma, Sehun calmly sips his drink, mistaking her intense focus for disappointment with his creation. But she suddenly clarifies that the problem isn't a flaw, it's that the item's compatibility is so impossibly perfect that she can't decide how to upgrade it. As she laments being overwhelmed by choice, he slams his hand down, declaring that her indecision doesn't matter. She looks up in confusion, only for him to calmly state that it's because he has more of them. He then drops an even bigger bombshell: the bracelets have a resonance effect, a revelation that completely stuns the master enchanter. Their intense exchange attracts a mysterious upperclassman from afar, who instantly recognizes Sehun as the top student of the Borsippa faculty. The student approaches with a serious expression, interrupting their meeting and demanding that Sehun come with him for a private talk. The student interrupts, accusing Sehun of being an underling for a woman named Erica, but Sehun, completely unfazed, dismisses his request for a private chat and tells him to speak his mind right there. The student explodes in frustration, demanding an apology for the public disrespect Sehun showed toward his young lady. With cold indifference, Sehun retorts that Erica herself was the one who told him to tear up her invitation. Cornered, the student pivots his accusation, claiming Sehun only did it because he already had a better offer from another powerful family. Now visibly annoyed, Sehun cuts to the chase and asks if Erica sent him to cause this scene. The student denies it, insisting he's acting on his own accord, a claim that draws a skeptical look from Yunha. However, Yunha just smirks, seeing right through his pathetic lie and finding the entire situation hilarious. She then openly mocks him, revealing that everyone knows he's nothing but a lapdog for another young master, whose arrogant face flashes in his mind. Enraged at being exposed, the student unleashes his power, threatening that while Sehun may be special now, he's nothing compared to the true monsters of Babel Academy. Unimpressed by the student's empty threats, Sehun simply calls him pathetic. He coldly asks if the so-called monster he's warning him about is actually himself. Screaming in a blind rage, the student unleashes a torrent of dark, shadowy energy to crush him. But Sehun doesn't even flinch, calmly reaching out a single hand to meet the overwhelming attack. A massive spectral beast lunges forward, only to be effortlessly deflected as Sehun shields a surprised Yuna from the blast. Yunha realizes with shock that this wasn't just mana. He used a physical dagger to completely dismantle the illusionary attack. The arrogant student is left trembling in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his ultimate move was so easily neutralized. Sehun just smirks, casually dangling a strange, dark essence he seemingly pulled from the attack itself. Suddenly, a sinister red aura explodes from his body as a system message announces the activation of a new skill, Greedy Iron. With a terrifying grin, he savors the power he just devoured, revealing its true origin is tied to none other than Ryu Yuna. A sudden explosion rips through the courtyard, blasting both Sehun and his defeated opponent apart with an explosive ring attack. The intervention came from a furious proctor, who delivered the powerful blow simply to separate the fighters. But Sehun stands completely unfazed over his fallen rival, the collateral damage around them proving the sheer force of the interruption. With the situation diffused, Ryu Yunha's demeanor completely shifts as she cheerfully addresses the unfathomable freshman. She asks for his recommendation on enchanting classes, a seemingly innocent question that holds a hidden weight. Yunha excitedly mentions a class run by a legendary figure named Leah Claudel, unaware that this name triggers a painful memory for Sehun. The mere mention of that name sends a jolt of agony through him, forcing him to turn away and compose himself. Just as he tries to leave, another student stops him, completely in awe of his skill, and asking to see the dagger that neutralized the attack. But the request doesn't come from him, as the mysterious and high-ranking Erica steps out from the shadows, her presence silencing everyone. With no other choice, the awestruck student nervously presents the legendary dagger to her, placing it directly into her waiting hand. Erica examines the dagger's blade, deciding this incident is too important for her brother and must be reported directly to the family head. She confirms the weapon has an anti-confiscation enchantment, a feature of a true medium, leaving the student beside her utterly baffled. A cold sweat breaks as she realizes the terrifying truth. Sehun must have created a unique counter skill on the spot. Back in a classroom, a quiet assessment reveals Sehun's hidden power, an S-rank aptitude for refining and an A-rank for sorcery. But his calm is shattered when a system window suddenly appears, announcing a connection has been established with Erica Ino. He instantly understands she must have been spying on his fight from the very beginning, witnessing his true strength. Still, he smirks at the daggers before him, having received proper compensation even after she took 10 of them. The scene shifts to a new class, where Sehun is already bored to death by Professor Kim In-cheol's lecture on theories he mastered long ago. But the professor's tone suddenly sharpens as he declares the theoretical portion is over, and the real lesson will now begin. In a stunning display of power, he demonstrates how a mana array can completely warp and reshape solid metal with a single touch. Professor Kim In-cheol explains that the true value of metal is unlocked through endless form transformations, and to become a true blacksmith, one must fully grasp the potential of the materials they handle. As he announces the day's practical lesson, Sehun looks on, completely bored by the elementary concepts. The task is simple yet precise. Use a mana array to create a notch in a special ingot, and then restore it perfectly. With the stage set, the professor gives the class a strict time limit of only 10 minutes to succeed or fail. But the moment the test begins, the classroom erupts into chaos as panicked students lose control of the volatile mana. While everyone else struggles, Sehun calmly places both hands on his ingot, ready to demonstrate his true mastery. In a shocking turn, both he and the blonde-haired Hans Barmut declare their completion almost simultaneously, their ingots flawless. Impressed by their overwhelming skill, the professor declares that only these two will proceed to the next stage. He then projects a far more complex mana array for them to apply, a challenge Sehun seems to master in an instant. Confident in his speed and skill, Hans Barmut is sure that this time, he will be the victor. But the professor reveals the next test, an absurdly complex mana array that seems impossible to replicate. As both prodigies begin their work, Hans pours every ounce of his focus into manifesting the intricate design. In a flash of genius, he presents his creation, declaring it a perfect masterpiece without a single flaw. The professor, however, simply calls out his name with an unreadable and chillingly cold expression. Then comes the true test, in order to restore the transformed ingot back to its original form, leaving the prideful student utterly stunned. The moment he tries, the mana array shatters violently, as the delicate structure completely collapses into ruin. The professor coldly explains that the ingot couldn't handle the strain, proving Hans' method was fundamentally wrong from the very beginning. He reminds the student of the most critical lesson, to fully grasp the potential of the metal itself. Because if an altered array cannot be restored, it isn't a transformation, it's nothing more than deterioration. Humbled, Hans can only bow his head and accept the harsh lesson on his flawed masterpiece. But as the prodigy walks away, Sehun silently wonders if he truly understood the secret he'd missed. He dismisses the thought, crushing the failed creation in his fist as he concludes it was all just a fluke. Then, with a casual flex of his power, the ruined metal flows like liquid, perfectly reforming in his grasp. This impossible feat stuns the other students, who can't believe their eyes. The display even catches Professor In-cheol's attention, who now demands Sehun repeat the transformation for all to see. With a sly grin, Sehun explains it away as a simple trick, claiming the ingot was just a weakened version for cadets. As the metal dissolves once more, the professor seems to accept this explanation, realizing the material was intentionally sensitive, but this only brings him shame, as he admits he failed to notice such a fundamental detail himself. This entire concept of a perfect, reversible transformation dates back to a legendary figure, the one who first mastered the unbreakable formula. This unbreakable formula, the so-called truth of iron, has remained the ultimate challenge for blacksmiths throughout history. Professor In-cheol scoffs, convinced no mere brat could solve it, while Sehun smirks, ready to shatter the record for a second time. As the sun sets over Babel Academy, the grueling class finally comes to an end. But just as Sehun prepares to leave, the professor dismisses everyone else and calls him over for a private discussion. He presents Sehun with an unexpected gift, a rare, highest, quality crimson flame gem pulsing with immense power. Incheol explains that this incredible ore can permanently amplify Sehun's own crimson flames, a gift prepared specifically for him. Sehun accepts with a confident smile, knowing this item will be a massive boost to his future plans. But the professor isn't finished and extends a personal invitation to join his exclusive elective course. Sehun immediately identifies the class as the legendary Weapon Origin Studies, surprising Incheol with his forbidden knowledge. With a knowing look, he reveals he's aware it's one of the most well-funded and powerful classes in the entire academy. Sehun recalls that in his past life, Professor Incheol was a complete nobody, a chilling sign that this man is fated for a tragic end. Despite this dark premonition, he confidently accepts the invitation to enroll in the exclusive class. Incheol is left stunned when Sehun clarifies this is only his 4th elective, a shockingly low number for a top student. As they shake hands to seal their new partnership, a faint blue energy crackles between them. But this was no ordinary handshake. Sehun's hidden ability activates, extracting a unique fire-infused ore directly from the professor's soul. Later that night, alone in his room, he contemplates a terrifying truth. If a person's bonds can become metal, then their very body can be forged. For any normal blacksmith, mixing different mana types would be a fatal mistake, causing a catastrophic internal conflict, but Sehun is different, smirking as he holds the crimson flame gem after exhausting his body's energy to prepare for this moment. Now, with his body drained and desperate for power, it begins to draw in the gem's immense, pure crimson flame essence. He realizes that, as a blacksmith, he must construct a mana circuit inside his own body, dedicated solely to the crimson flame, and the process is excruciating, causing him to grit his teeth as waves of agony rack his body. But as a spectral hammer and anvil materialize above him, he reaches the final, critical stage of his transformation. With a surge of immense power, he declares his intention to forge not a weapon, but himself. The system confirms his insane gamble paid off, granting him the S-rank skill Body Refinement Divine Magic and a significant power boost. Yet this triumph triggers a painful memory from his past life, where a defeated Sehun knelt before the S-rank hero, Ryu Yunha. He remembers her condescending smirk as she mocked his pathetic failure, calling him an idiot for his methods. But now, with newfound power and knowledge, he smirks with grim determination, vowing to use everything at his disposal. This time, whether facing a future ally or a bitter enemy, he swears he will leave behind no regrets. At the prestigious Babel Academy, students are given their final, high-stakes assignment for the semester. A proctor warns them that their performance today will set the tone for everything to come. With a unified shout, the students begin their frantic work in the Academy's grand forge. But while others rush, Lee Sehun inspects his flawed creation, realizing his body is still out of sync. Knowing he has no time to waste, he grips his hammer with renewed and desperate focus. He then unleashes a flurry of expert techniques, heating and hammering the steel with masterful precision. After a moment of intense labor, he holds up the perfectly corrected blade, confident he has fixed the major flaws. However, this single act of perfection has cost him precious time, jeopardizing his budget for the other items. He makes a critical decision, concluding it's better to forge one perfect weapon than a dozen flawed ones. With a final, satisfying hiss, Sehun sets his masterpiece down on the anvil. He then stands back, listening as a familiar, world-altering sound fills his senses. To him, it's not a simple noise, but the very sound of the world crumbling before his craft. A confident smirk appears on his face. For this is the unmistakable sign that he has forged something truly great. Suddenly, a brilliant white light erupts as the system confirms the creation of a weapon that has surpassed the elite level. He is not only rewarded with a high-quality rare greatsword but also granted the powerful white light style skill. Holding his flawless blade, he glances at another student's pathetic, bent sword, thinking his own is just barely passable. He feels a rush of satisfaction, realizing his legendary skills from his past life are finally returning. Meanwhile, this impossible gap in talent has completely shattered his classmates, who now wonder if they should just drop out. The next morning, Sehun meets with the S-rank hero Ryu Yuna, who is intrigued by his sudden interest in her enchantment process. She agrees to show him her workshop, but is surprised when he leads her far out into the remote countryside. He cryptically tells her that his secrets are not something just anyone can witness, building a deep sense of mystery. Their journey finally ends at a secluded building named the Akalkuf Smithy, his hidden destination. But as Yuna bursts inside, she calls out in shock for her grandmother, revealing an unexpected family connection to this place. An old woman with a sharp, unimpressed gaze appears, telling her granddaughter to quiet down. She immediately sizes up the young man standing beside her, bluntly asking if he's Yunha's new boyfriend. After learning he's just the top student from Babel, she scoffs, judging him as nothing more than a soft-looking brat. Despite the dismissal, the woman introduces herself as Helena, and Sehun confidently states his name, ready to prove her dead wrong. Helena bluntly tells her granddaughter to stop wasting time and get to work, unimpressed by her complaints. Sehun is then calmly guided into the heart of the workshop, a place of hidden legendary skill. Inside, he immediately recognizes the master's touch, wondering why someone with such immense talent would be hiding in a simple hardware shop. His eyes are then drawn to her tools, a vast palette filled with powders ground from pure mana stones. He instantly deduces their purpose, noting that her collection far exceeds the standard for restoring damaged enchantment formulas. Yunha confirms his brilliant deduction with a snap, surprised by his immediate understanding of their craft. She explains that this is how she practices her enchantments freely, unburdened by the insane cost of materials. With a deft stroke of her brush, she begins weaving a complex magical sigil onto an ordinary pan. But Sehun reveals his true purpose, recalling the moment he learned this supposed genius was actually a failure who couldn't even maintain her position. As he watches her work, Sehun realizes he now understands the cause of her legendary slump and the solution to fix it. He silently acknowledges her intense focus, knowing that losing oneself in their craft is a rare talent. But his attention is quickly captured by a box of special materials designed to resonate with mana circuits. Suddenly, a new voice challenges him, daring him to try his hand at engraving the fabled white light. The imposing woman, Helena, scoffs, telling him to pick any item from the pile if he's truly capable. A confident smirk spreads across Sehun's face as he accepts the unexpected test, ready to demonstrate his power. He walks past countless valuable artifacts and decisively picks up a simple, unassuming kitchen knife. Helena looks on with pure disbelief, questioning why he would choose such a mundane tool for a legendary task. But Sehun sees its hidden perfection, recognizing the perfectly aligned blade as the work of a true swordmaster. He selects a whetstone with the most compressed mana, certain he can sharpen the blade to its absolute limit. With masterful precision, he begins to hone the mundane knife, each movement fluid and deliberate. Helena watches from the side, a faint smile gracing her lips as she questions if this is truly the work of a freshman. But the intense atmosphere is shattered when another craftsman comically announces his own work is finished, breaking her focus. The man seems shocked to see Helena there, addressing her informally while she dismisses him with a curt reply. Another woman then joins them, smugly pointing out that Helena's attempt to test their junior seems to have backfired completely. Enraged by the teasing, Helena snaps and flicks the craftsman on the forehead, with enough force to send his glasses flying. Ignoring the chaos, Sehun presents the now perfected knife to Helena, who curtly asks if his work is complete. With a confident smirk and glowing golden eyes, he declares that this is merely his best for now, promising to surpass even this masterpiece in the future. Helena dismisses the two craftsmen, curtly telling them to leave as her failed test concludes. As Sehun calmly leads a concerned Erica away, a boisterous professor suddenly bursts in, disrupting Helena's contemplation of the knife. She tells the loud swordsmanship professor to keep it down, questioning his strange obsession with running a restaurant on the side. He completely ignores her and excitedly grabs the kitchen knife Sehun had just perfected. But as he inspects the blade, his boisterous expression instantly shifts to one of utter confusion. Turning to Helena, he jokingly asks if she was drunk when she sharpened it, or if one of her assistant's skills had suddenly skyrocketed. Helena coldly reveals a truth that sends a shockwave through the seasoned professor. It was the work of a mere freshman. She confirms his disbelief, stating with absolute certainty that this year's new student is responsible for this masterpiece. Meanwhile, Sehun walks away completely unaware, leaving the master swordsman to wonder just who this mysterious new talent could possibly be. As Sehun walks with the dean, Ryu Yunha, she casually mentions a retired professor from the metallurgy department. Yunha probes for more details, sensing there's a deeper story, but Sehun claims to know nothing. Internally, however, a cold dread washes over him as he recalls how this was the beginning of the end for the entire department in his past life. Trying to change the subject, Yunha eagerly asks for his opinion on her enchantment skills, and he gives her a bland, satisfactory review. But just as she starts to get giddy, his eyes begin to glow as he cuts her off, bluntly telling her that her thinking is far too narrow. He then shatters her composure by revealing he knows she conceived a better method, but chose not to use it, leaving the S-rank hero wondering how he could possibly read her mind. His words become a crushing weight, accusing her of actively suppressing her own imagination, the very source of a creator's power. The criticism strikes a raw nerve, as she internally screams back that she's painfully aware of her own self-imposed cage. Seeing that she understands, Sehun decides to stop talking and instead reaches into his coat to provide a demonstration. He then pulls out a simple kitchen knife, telling one of the most powerful figures in the academy to focus, because He's about to teach her a lesson she'll never forget. Sehun begins his lesson, explaining that enchantment is like carving a dream onto a submerged reality. He then infuses the blade with his first enchantment, the Crimson Lotus, giving it a terrifying red aura. But before Yunha can even process this, he adds a second layer of white radiance flow, leaving her completely stunned. He reveals the secret isn't on the exterior, but an enhancement placed deep beneath the weapon's surface. His eyes gleam as he explains the core concept. If one layer isn't enough, you must divide it. To prove his point, he hurls the simple kitchen knife into the ground with impossible force. The blade vibrates intensely, humming with an overwhelming power it was never meant to hold. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of light carrying a palpable killing intent erupts from the ground, splitting the very air. Yunha is left speechless, realizing that what she's witnessing is the work of a true genius forging their own path. Her shock instantly turns into manic excitement as she desperately demands to borrow the impossible weapon. The S-rank hero Yunha desperately begs Sehun for the revolutionary knife, promising to remake it. Unfazed, Sehun calmly offers her not just the blade, but his personal set of tools as well. The dean explodes with pure joy, leaping into the air as she accepts his incredible offer. He simply waves her off, momentarily stunned by her overwhelming intensity as she vanishes. But a sly grin appears as a system window confirms he's extracted a powerful connection from her true identity, Rhea Clodel. Later, his focus shifts to a grand arena, where he anticipates a legendary clash between two titans. Suddenly, Hez interrupted by Erica, who appears right behind him demanding to know what Hez doing. He turns to confront the quiet girl, asking if she's following him and if she'll leave when told. She surprisingly agrees, offering to simply watch him from a distance, to which he reluctantly consents. Finally, stepping inside, he reveals his true prize. Two unique, high-grade ores born from his new bonds with Erica and the S-rank hero. The grand ranking match of Babel Academy finally begins, a massive stage set for a legendary clash of titans. The event is hosted by the energetic and charismatic young professor of the martial arts department, Lan Fang. As the crowd roars with anticipation, she prepares to introduce the first of today's mighty competitors. A lone figure emerges into the spotlight, the top senior from a legendary family known for producing S-rank heroes. For 3 straight years, she has dominated as the undisputed champion, a flawless superhuman, and an active A-rank hero. She is the Holy Swordmaster, Arya Myers, whose arrogant smirk shows she expects nothing less than an easy victory. But as the crowd goes wild, Sehun watches from the stands with cold indifference, knowing the true stakes of this fated battle. Then, her opponent is revealed, a rising star from the Spear Arts department, shrouded in shadow and power. A knowing grin spreads across Sehun's face as he recognizes a key figure from his past life. The challenger is none other than the infamous warrior known only as Mad, Yom Seongha. Yom Seongha opens with a furious barrage of fiery strikes, but the Holy Swordmaster meets his assault head-on. The clash of steel and magic sends a massive shockwave across the arena, blinding the audience. Yet from the stands, Sehun grits his teeth in utter frustration at the one-sided display. Seongha desperately channels more power into his weapon, but it's clear he's being completely overwhelmed. A smug grin appears on Arya's face as her golden eyes glow, signaling the end of the exchange. She effortlessly unleashes a devastating ring of holy energy, asserting her absolute dominance. Seongha's next desperate lunge is casually deflected, revealing a catastrophic gap in their power levels. Sehun coldly notes that for a famed successor, this performance is pathetically below standard. But he quickly realizes the true problem isn't the warrior, but the laughably weak weapon he's been forced to use. And as if on cue, Seongha's spear cracks and shatters under the immense pressure, leaving him utterly defenseless. Staring at the broken tip of his weapon, Seongha reels from his humiliating loss, and he finally looks down in shame, forced to admit his utter defeat. Across the arena, Arya Myers stands victorious as her win is announced to the roaring crowd. The massive arena echoes with cheers for the champion, while the loser stands alone in her shadow. The announcer tries to start the interviews but awkwardly reveals Seongha has already fled the stage in disgrace. Arya just smirks, feigning modesty by saying her next fight might actually be difficult for her. But while she plays to the adoring crowd, Seongha turns his back and walks away from the spotlight. From the stands, Sehun observes the defeated warrior leave, noting the brat's terrible mood. As Erika questions his own early departure, he coldly states he has no interest in Arya's type. With a final thought declaring the champion annoying, Sehun walks off, completely unimpressed by her power. Erika watches Sehun walk away, confused by his sudden anger after dismissing the arena's champion. His strange behavior leads her to a single, startling conclusion about this interesting freshman. At the same time, the victorious Arya Myers recalls that perhaps there is one interesting person worth her attention after all. But far from the roaring crowd, the defeated Yom Seongha sits alone, drowning in the shame of his loss. That's when Sehun appears before him, relieved to see the future hero alive and well in this timeline. He flashes back to the man Seongha was destined to become a key pillar of humanity's final defense force. A warrior who ultimately sacrificed his own life to defeat a demon god, prompting the dejected fighter to ask if Sehun witnessed his humiliating match. Sehun casually admits he did, and just as Seongha begins to question how he was found, he's cut short. His eyes widen as another powerful figure, the top of the Borsippa faculty, suddenly appears right behind him. Yet Sehun completely ignores the high-ranking newcomer, simply smiling that he wants to talk, leaving Seongha baffled by his insane confidence. The top student of Borsippa immediately dismisses Sehun, telling him to leave. Sehun turns his back, as the arrogant student declares his absolute hatred for all weaklings. He continues his verbal assault, mocking anyone who would dare think themselves his equal, using cheap tricks. But Sehun stops, turns, and utters a single, chilling word that freezes the air. Blacksmith. He smirks, noting how surprisingly tame this supposed mad dog is compared to the future he knows. Seeing the growing hostility and crackling energy in his opponent's hand, Sehun realizes words are useless. The top student gives one final warning as the two prepare for a direct confrontation. He then declares that the legendary history of his family's spear technique will end because of him. With a roar, he lunges forward, intent on utterly crushing the upstart blacksmith. His fist clenches, power condensing for a strike meant to annihilate Sehun on the spot. Sehun catches the devastating punch with a single hand, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly yellow light, as a mysterious power called Greed Iron activates, allowing him to effortlessly brush aside the mana-packed fist. The faculty top smirks, finally acknowledging that the blacksmith might have enough power to be worth his time, but he declares this is the end. Gathering lingering mana trails to unleash the true strength of his ultimate spear technique, with a final roar, he launches himself at Sehun, his entire body wreathed in a swirling vortex of destructive fire. A cataclysmic explosion of raw power erupts, meant to completely incinerate the blacksmith where he stands. The dust and smoke begin to settle, leaving the outcome of the impossible clash hanging in the air. Yet from the epicenter of the blast, Sehun emerges without a single scratch, completely unfazed by the attack. His opponent freezes in horror, realizing the embers of his own signature technique are now responding to Sehun's command. The horrifying truth dawns on him. Sehun didn't just block the attack, he shattered its very nature and stole its power. Sehun's patience wears thin as he feels the effects of his greedy iron skill begin to fade completely. The tense atmosphere reminds Mad Dog Seongha of the uncontrollable rage that once led to a horrific massacre. He remembers that past battle, where his body reached its absolute limit after a critical ability wore off. Back in the present, Sehun realizes a gentle approach is pointless and decides he'll have to break Seongha instead. In a flash, he lunges forward, a blur of motion too fast for anyone to properly track. He seizes Seongha's wrist with an unbreakable grip, stopping the fearsome fighter dead in his tracks. But suddenly, another student named Jake Myers intervenes, grabbing Sehun's own hand with surprising strength. The newcomer trembles, caught between two monsters as Seongha questions his connection to the faculty top. Seongha gives a silent, steely command with just a glance, a clear dismissal of the situation. Understanding the signal, Jake eagerly pulls Sehun away, successfully diffusing the volatile confrontation. Jake frantically tries to drag Sehun away, telling him to stop saying weird things and just move. But Sehun stands alone, reflecting on how he almost lost his temper and unleashed a devastating attack. A single bead of sweat rolls down his face as he considers the grave consequences of that near mistake. Jake then lectures him, warning that he was seconds from death for provoking such a powerful senior. Sehun just smirks, dismissing the danger, as a system window confirms a bond has been successfully formed with Seongha. He visualizes the Mad Dog as a powerful flaming card, already planning how to raise their bond level. His attention then shifts to Jake, realizing this kid might be just as useful in his own way. Jake cheerfully dismisses any concern for his hand, proudly showing it off as tougher than it looks. Sehun files away this information about his strong hands before changing the subject to something far more important. He directly confronts Jake, asking what he knows about his powerful sister, Arya Myers. Jake panics, screaming that his sister kept asking questions about Sehun for a reason. He reveals the terrifying truth that the Academy's strongest has now taken a direct interest in him. Jake frantically begs him to be quiet, explaining his S-rank sister probably heard every single word, but Sehun just smirks, revealing this was his exact plan to get the attention of Seonga's greatest rival. Jake tries to warn him, insisting he doesn't understand just how dangerous his sister truly is. Sehun coldly cuts him off, describing her as petty and scheming, much to Jake's horror. The accuracy of his guess leaves Jake literally seeing double, completely stunned by Sehun's insight. Jake's question hangs in the air as Sehun's face darkens, a deep-seated hatred finally surfacing. His memories flash back to the legendary Holy Swordmaster, Arya Myers. A figure of immense power, he remembers her standing over a field of ruin, callously dismissing her legendary sword and revealing a dark history between them. He recalls the dark legend of how the Holy Swordmaster vanished, only to be replaced by the demon god of annihilating light. But when pressed for a reason, Sehun simply smirks, claiming he just despises her face. With that chilling statement, he nonchalantly turns and walks away, leaving Jake completely stunned. Jake is left wondering about their twisted history when his phone suddenly buzzes with an incoming message. It's a text from his sister, who declares she'll now use him as a middleman to watch Sehun. The terrifying implication of being a pawn in their dangerous game sends a shiver down his spine. Another message arrives from the petty, scheming Arya, her smug face confirming his worst fears. Utterly defeated, Jake can only curse his fate as he's caught in a conflict far beyond his control. The next morning, a drained Sehun is approached in class by a nervous Jake with an update. But before he can say a word, a bizarre figure bursts into the lecture hall, demanding everyone's attention. This peculiar new professor, Reese Doba, announces he'll be teaching attribute smithing for the next 2 weeks. Known throughout the academy as a complete lunatic, he begins distributing evaluations and budgets from the previous class. After calling up several students, he pauses dramatically while looking at the final name on his list. He calls out Lee Sehun, who rises, but the professor stuns the entire room by suddenly declaring that Sehun has no budget at all. He then reveals the shocking reason. Sehun's work was so masterfully crafted, it's being sold at the prestigious second-year open auction. His budget will now be determined by the final bid, a move so unprecedented that Sehun immediately suspects foul play from the academy's higher-ups. However, he dismisses the thought, trusting another professor to have prevented any true sabotage, and simply accepts the bizarre situation. With the budget issue settled, Professor Doba pivots to the day's lesson on residual mana, announcing a special volunteer will be assisting. And to everyone's shock, the assistant is none other than Yom Seonga, the mad dog he just recently humiliated in a completely one-sided battle. Sehun remains unfazed as his classmates whisper in shock at the presence of the mad dog, who is now their teaching assistant. The eccentric professor silences the room, announcing that before any practical work begins, they must first understand the core concepts of their craft. He begins his lecture on residual mana, explaining the two fundamental forms, a basic charge type and a far more difficult independent type that gathers mana from the air itself. The professor elaborates that the independent type is a true artisan's challenge, as its creation depends entirely on the unique combination of material, technique, and the maker's own power. Therefore, the entire class will start with the simpler charge type, and with a sharp command, he calls upon his assistant to demonstrate. In an instant, a volatile and powerful red mana erupts from Seongha's hand, crackling with raw energy. The professor explains that while fire mana is notoriously difficult to control, mastering it grants immense and sustained power. Seongha then unleashes his signature technique, the Flame Wheel Blossoming Spear, a perfect example of that absolute control. The other students can only watch in disbelief, admitting that such mastery over volatile fire mana is on a completely different level from their own. With the demonstration concluded, the professor clicks a remote and coldly announces their assignment, giving them just 1 week to replicate this power. The professor gives them a single, cryptic theme for their nearly impossible assignment. With the lecture over, the eccentric instructor dismisses the class to the forge, leaving the powerful Yom Seonga looking completely unbothered. But as everyone shuffles out, Sehun's eyes lock onto the prodigy, knowing this is a critical opportunity he cannot afford to miss. He isn't the only one with plans, as another student named Hans Barmut eagerly steps forward to greet the infamous mad dog. Seonga doesn't even spare him a glance, coldly shutting him down with 2 simple words that leave the arrogant student utterly defeated. An oppressive aura of intimidation descends upon the room, forcing the other students to flee in terrified silence. Suddenly, Seongha's gaze lands on the one person walking away without fear, calling out Lee Sehun's name. Sehun pauses at the doorway, only to be confronted with a piercing question about what he could possibly know. He then reveals his impossible knowledge, detailing the exact mechanics of Seongha's power and how it scales compared to an A-rank hero. Sehun calmly analyzes the earlier demonstration, deducing that Seongha is holding back enough power to maintain 6 wheels, leaving the prodigy completely stunned by this nobody's insight. Sehun drops another bombshell, asking if Seongha once reached the legendary 7 wheels, leaving the prodigy speechless. He continues, stating that one day, that power simply vanished a secret. Seongha has never told a single soul. Sehun then explains that while he's talented with fire himself, he could tell something was deeply wrong with Seongha's flames. He describes it as a massive power held in reserve but never fully unleashed, as if it's being wielded half-heartedly. Cutting through the analysis, a desperate Seongha asks the one question that matters. Does he know the cause? A flicker of hope crosses the prodigy's face when Sehun admits he has a guess. But that hope is immediately crushed when Sehun casually says he sees no reason to tell him. With his pride completely shattered, the mad dog is forced to submit, asking Sehun to name his price. Sehun then lays out his demands: fair payment for his advice, and complete consultation on any future problems. Finally, he gives the prodigy an ultimatum to decide before they reach the forge, completely seizing control of their new dynamic. Cornered with no other choice, the mad dog finally agrees to Sehun's outrageous demands, but he adds one last condition: Sehun must provide undeniable proof that he holds the answer. So later that afternoon, they arrive at the Academy's forging room to begin the demonstration. Seongha then watches in utter disbelief, as Sehun prepares to forge without a blueprint, a move that should be impossible. Sehun begins by mixing 2 opposing ores, a bizarre combination that defies all conventional logic. To everyone watching, this is a critical mistake that should instantly obliterate all the elemental mana within the metal. Yet with his eyes glowing gold, Sehun masterfully applies heat, waiting for the precise moment the mana begins to leak. He then unleashes an advanced technique called thermal displacement, manipulating the raw flames with his bare hands to force the energy back into the ore. To a normal blacksmith, it's just a high-level skill, but Sehun knows that for the mad dog, it's a world-shattering revelation, and as Seongha is told to watch closely, the prodigy's entire understanding of his own power is about to be completely broken. Sehun reveals the secret to his power: a perfect circle formed by forcing fire mana out, while burrowing dark mana in. Unseen by the students, a mysterious figure in a top hat watches from above, instantly grasping the technique's profound implications. For Seongha, this is a world-shattering revelation, reminding him of the forbidden dark attribute mana he was forced to seal away. He realizes in horror that this very power is why his own strength catastrophically plummeted from the 6th wheel down to the 5th. But Sehun then effortlessly summons 5 black flame wheels, declaring this perfected version vastly superior to Seongha's original 7. This throws the mad dog into a panic, as he knows an instructor from his sect is coming to verify his skills. The stakes are impossibly high, for if he's judged to be below the 6th wheel, he'll be stripped of his successor status. Sehun suggests simply using his old technique for the test, but Seongha reveals a devastating truth about his condition. He admits he has completely lost control of his dark mana, making any attempt to use his old power a suicidal act. And when he asks how much time he has, Sehun's calm reply seals his fate. The inspector arrives tomorrow. Desperate and cornered, Seongha realizes that losing his successor status means total excommunication from his clan. Suddenly, Sehun grabs his arm with an iron grip, presenting an ultimatum. He asks if Seongha is willing to do absolutely anything to secure his position, and the mad dog agrees without a second of hesitation. With a dangerous glint in his eye, Sehun accepts the desperate plea, now holding the prodigy's entire future in his hands. His first move is to propose a complete weapon overhaul using a legendary ore that can perfectly resonate with both fire and dark mana. To begin this impossible task, he leads the way to a private training room reserved only for the Academy's absolute top rankers. There, Sehun casually accesses a holographic interface, preparing to tweak the very skin of their training environment. In an instant, the world around them glitches and dissolves, impossibly reforming into the familiar grounds of the Manhwa sect. Sehun mockingly asks if He's feeling homesick, revealing he has perfectly replicated Seongha's own sacred training grounds. With a confident smirk, he finally begins, summoning a core of pure energy to forge the very tool that will rewrite Seongha's destiny. Sehun carefully binds the Crimson Resonance Blackstone to the weapon's shaft, a legendary ore that can harmonize both fire and dark mana. With the first spear complete, he swiftly finishes the second, creating a matching pair for a new fighting style. Seongha looks baffled by the awkward dual spear setup, but Sehun insists it's the only way to handle his two conflicting attributes. He then issues a simple but profound command. Create a flame wheel with the left hand, while simultaneously releasing dark mana with the right. Seongha takes a deep breath, steeling himself to attempt a feat he's never successfully managed before. But as he unleashes a torrent of fire, his dark mana erupts uncontrollably, causing the entire technique to violently backfire. Stunned by the failure, Seongha demands to know what happened, and Sehun calmly explains that his powers are clashing instead of cooperating. The problem, he reveals, is that Seongha has spent his entire life suppressing his dark side, causing his two manas to interfere with each other. With a confident smirk, Sehun presents a special wristband, promising that with it, mastering both attributes and reaching the legendary sixth wheel will be easy. Now fully equipped and understanding the path forward, a newfound determination finally gleams in the Mad Dog's eyes. 3 hours into the grueling session, Seongha moves like a blur, his dual spears weaving a vortex of pure, destructive energy. Sehun watches with a knowing smirk, impressed by how quickly the Mad Dog is adapting to a method designed by his own future self. Every muscle, every breath, and every shift in mana is being meticulously analyzed, and Seongha suddenly realizes he's under intense scrutiny. When confronted, Sehun cheekily claims he's just collecting data. He reveals this data is critical for forging the ultimate weapon tailor-made for Seongha's unique fighting style, but he quickly downplays it as a mere school assignment, causing Seongha to scoff at the idea of a first year creating anything worthwhile. Sehun then pivots to a far more personal question, asking why Seongha is so obsessed with becoming the sect's successor. After a heavy silence, Seongha confesses that it is the direct wish of his master. He explains his unwavering loyalty, revealing he was an orphan taken in and raised by the legendary S-rank hero who founded the entire sect. The story cuts to a portrait of his adoptive father, the formidable Yeom Jin-hyun, the man whose legacy Seongha is now fighting to uphold. Seongha reveals his master's influence is absolute, a bond forged between a father and the orphan he raised as his own. From his chair, Sehun watches this emotional display with a knowing smirk as their bond level suddenly skyrockets to level 3. Stunned by this sudden alliance, Seongha finally asks the one question on his mind. Why is a practical stranger helping him so much? But Sehun doesn't give a straight answer, his silence speaking volumes as a grander scheme clicks into place. He instead reveals a glimpse into his true ambition, the hellish landscape of the 6 great demon realms. Sehun then declares his plan to enter these forbidden zones, admitting he needs powerful guardians to survive the coming onslaught. He frames it as a business deal, suggesting that the next sect leader must possess both immense skill and incredible wealth. With a sharp glare, Sehun reminds him this isn't charity, questioning why he'd expect anything for free from someone he barely knows. Seongha's hand tightens around his weapon as he finally understands a steep price is being demanded for this incredible power. Then, with newfound resolve, Seongha makes a counteroffer. Help him become the sect leader, and he will follow Sehun into the very depths of hell. Seongha makes a solemn vow. Forge the weapons, and he will personally slay the demon gods for him. Holding a glowing red stone, he asks one last time if Sehun will regret sealing this dangerous pact. But with a sinister grin, Sehun crushes the orb, activating a powerful seal that floods him with demonic energy. The scene then shifts to the vast and intimidating training grounds of the Flame Gate. Here, a high-ranking instructor named Kang Hyunwoon smugly greets the newly arrived young master. It's revealed his disciples have gathered to watch a supposed spar between Sehun and Seongha, a lesson arranged by the clan master. The instructor begins to flatter Seongha, openly calling him the clear successor to the clan master's throne. But Seongha immediately cuts him off with a cold glare, warning him that the succession is far from decided. After a tense apology, the instructor suggests a test of skill, only for Seongha to bluntly refuse the offer. Instead, he makes a shocking declaration of applying for a promotion, a bold challenge that leaves the instructor utterly stunned. In a secret pact, Sehun promises to cover for Seongha, urging him to unleash his full power against the 7th ring. The instructor tries to lecture Seongha about his place, but he's coldly silenced for talking too much. Snapping under the disrespect, the instructor mockingly accepts the challenge and furiously calls for his spear. He declares the match will be a domain sparring, a pure contest of power where the stronger flame will win. As the duel begins, Seongha ignites his twin blades, unleashing a crimson aura that feels dangerously unstable. The instructor scoffs at the dual short spears, dismissing the weapons as crude and beneath him. But his arrogance shatters as Seongha erupts in a storm of dark, violent flames that shocks everyone watching. The instructor screams in disbelief, questioning how he dared to use the forbidden dark attribute mana. Surrounded by his corrupt power, Seonga calmly declares that their clash will prove whose flames are superior. Utterly enraged, the instructor lunges forward with his own spear, vowing to make Seongha regret this ultimate defiance. The two masters of flame collide in a blinding explosion of power, but the instructor's refined technique is instantly devoured by Seongha's corrupt, ravenous aura. The instructor stares in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend what is happening. His signature flame ring is not just being overpowered, it's being ripped apart and consumed. Then the impossible happens as his spear, a symbol of his authority, cracks and shatters into pieces. In the silence that follows, the proud instructor is left kneeling in total defeat. Seonga stands victorious, mockingly asking if his crude weapons were enough for him. With the battle over, he reveals his true goal, to become the formal successor of the Flame Gate. But Sehun pushes further, asking what it takes to become the true clan master. Seonga reveals the two impossible conditions: reaching the legendary 8th ring and winning the approval of the clan's masters. Sehun examines the shattered remains of the instructor's weapon as Seonga boasts he can take the clan's consent by force, warning it won't be so easy next time. Dismissing any doubt, Seongha grips his own weapon, claiming his recent display of overwhelming power is proof enough of his inevitable success. But Sehun just smirks, cryptically telling the arrogant warrior to worry about the price he'll eventually have to pay. Seongha's arrogance vanishes as he immediately agrees to the terms, offering anything from cash to rare materials to settle this debt. Sehun then reveals he has something else he wants to commission, catching the mad dog completely off guard with his timing. Seongha glances at the powerful weapon in his hand, admitting it's useful but ultimately just a borrowed tool for a mere class assignment. With newfound respect, he demands Sehun forge him a truly powerful weapon, a request that solidifies their bond and triggers a system notification confirming their new transaction. The scene then shifts to a massive, packed auction house where the stage is set for an important event. An energetic auctioneer takes the stage, officially kicking off the regular auction for the second-year students of the Faculty of Technology. In the audience, Sehun sits between his allies, noting the unusually large crowd as they remark on his new look and the professor who forced them to attend. From the shadows, Professor Kim In-cheol watches his rival, Michael Barmut, knowing the spotlight is his only shield against their schemes. Meanwhile, the cunning Hans Barmut reveals a new twist, a special quality verification designed to expose any flawed weapons. The test is then unveiled a legendary cloth called Seojiumpo, woven from the fur of an S-rank magic beast and said to be as hard as steel. With a powerful swing, the auctioneer demonstrates the brutal trial, as an ordinary blade instantly shatters upon impact, failing spectacularly. He declares that this test will easily weed out any items that sacrificed durability for cutting power. The first sword is then presented to the shadowed audience, its fate now resting on this seemingly impossible challenge. Back in his seat, Sehun smirks with amusement as his companion, Erica, asks if he understands the true reason behind this elaborate setup. He begins to explain the hidden secret of the white tiger. Its body has a unique ability that mimics the hardness of any metal it touches. Erica's face falls with concern, realizing that any sword focusing on pure cutting power is now at a massive disadvantage, destined to fail. Sehun reveals that this entire test is a blatant setup designed to humiliate his professor, but he remains completely unfazed, knowing the trap only works on improperly made blades as the auction for lesser weapons concludes. Then, the moment of truth arrives as the announcer calls for the quality verification of sword number 36, crafted by the freshman valedictorian himself. The blade, imbued with a brilliant white light, descends with immense power upon the indestructible cloth, and with a sharp crack, the sword strikes its target, the impact echoing through the silent hall. But instead of shattering, the blade lies perfectly unharmed, glowing with a mysterious energy as the proctor stares in utter disbelief. He's left completely speechless, unable to comprehend how the sword survived a test designed for guaranteed failure. Sensing the confusion, Sehun rises from his seat, ready to reveal the secret behind his impossible creation. He calmly walks towards the stage, offering to explain the phenomenon that has left everyone stunned. Sehun reveals the sword's true power. It gathered ambient mana to form a second, crystallized blade over the first, a technique beyond their understanding. Sehun clarifies that the sword's power is a unique phenomenon he calls the killing edge. And from the audience, a woman named Erica realizes this must be the secret behind its impossible durability. But he then reveals a deeper truth. Identical killing edges don't nullify each other, but instead resonate with immense power. And to demonstrate this, he presents a strange crystallized ore to the stunned crowd. He crushes the crystal over the blade, activating a hidden bond, engraving known as a tuning stone. Instantly, The once chaotic mana around the sword corrects itself into a perfect, stable flow. All it needs now is a clear path, which he carves with a single, precise motion across the steel. Suddenly, a brilliant wave of blue energy erupts from the blade, completely overwhelming the entire hall. A system window confirms the impossible as the sword's grade is upgraded from high grade to rare. Sehun smirks, knowing a simple whetstone could never unlock a power of this magnitude. Sehun coldly instructs the nervous auctioneer to reflect the sword's true value in the starting bid. The price immediately skyrockets to 5 million, as a young noble and the enigmatic Erica recognize the value of a rare-grade weapon crafted by a faculty top. In an instant, the auction hall erupts into a frenzy, with bids exploding from 10 million to a staggering 100 million. The young noble is left completely dumbfounded as a rival bidder instantly doubles the price to 200 million. But Erica calmly counters with 210 million, her expression unreadable as she stares down her shocked competitor. The auctioneer, sensing a massive payday, tries to fan the flames of rivalry and goad the bidders into going even higher. As the numbers climb past 300 million, Sehun can only watch in disbelief, realizing this pocket change for the ultra-rich is a life-altering sum for him. Suddenly, a new bid silences the entire room, an astronomical 600 million shattering the young noble's composure. He remembers his orders, to secure Sehun's weapon no matter the cost, a mission that now seems utterly impossible. But the source of the bid is revealed to be a terrifying new player, a true whale in this shrimp fight whose intimidating presence freezes everyone in their seats. The young noble is left utterly defeated, his mission a complete failure as Erica shakes her head in disappointment. With a final slam of the gavel, the auction is over, and the legendary sword is officially sold for an unbelievable 600 million. Meanwhile, Sehun, the hidden craftsman behind it all, can only smile at the fortune he's just made. The money is quickly transferred as Dean Ryu Yunha confirms with Kim In-cheol that the full, astronomical sum has been received. Meeting with her later, Sehun reveals his intention to test a powerful weapon in a real-world danger zone. A predatory glint appears in the Dean's eyes as she agrees, knowing such a fine weapon would be wasted on simple training. She then proposes a specific location for this test, Silver Moon Mountain, a candidate site for the first-year extermination drill. Sehun calmly agrees, admitting he was already planning to scout the area ahead of time for the upcoming event. However, Yuna hesitates, realizing that her official position as dean makes accompanying a student on a private excursion very complicated. But Sehun counters with an irresistible offer to craft any weapon she desires, a proposal she eagerly accepts by immediately scheduling their trip. Sehun smirks, admitting his stated reasons were merely an excuse for a much grander plan, because his true target is a lost artifact of the world's strongest sorcerer, hidden deep within Silver Moon Mountain. Meanwhile, the blonde student who lost the auction now stands defeated before a shadowy figure. His aide taunts him for his inability to secure the legendary weapon for their family. He can only apologize as she coldly dismisses his failure and moves on to their next strategy. She then gives him a new, covert mission to approach the formidable Professor Ma Guangsu during his class. The aide dangles the ultimate prize, promising to discuss his family succession if he can handle the task. But she follows it with a chilling warning that his top academy rank is on the verge of being lost forever. The weight of the threat crushes him as he realizes the immense pressure he's under. Left with no other choice, the student accepts the dangerous assignment, sealing his fate. Filled with a new, dangerous resolve, the humiliated student vows to take back a sword from Lee Sehun, whatever it takes. But his ruthless sister immediately silences him, questioning his audacity to interrupt her and forcing a panicked apology. With a chillingly serene smile, she leans back and simply tells him to bring it. She then gives him her blessing to succeed by any means necessary, a cruel glint in her eyes. The scene shifts as we see her watching Sehun from afar, admitting that his very presence rubs her the wrong way. There's something about him she finds strangely and deeply grating, a thorn in her side she can't yet explain. Meanwhile, the target of her ire calmly presents his latest masterpiece to a top student and a mysterious doll-like appraiser. He reveals not one but two high-grade spears, a crimson and a black, both perfectly engineered for the student's unique flame wheel technique. The true genius of the weapons is that they are designed to repel the user's mana if their form is even slightly off. This leaves the expert appraiser stunned, declaring the spears to be a perfect fusion of a deadly weapon and a master's textbook. The student is so impressed he grants Sehun a perfect score, exempting him from class entirely. Other students can only watch in disbelief, complaining about the massive gap in their abilities. With his business concluded, Sehun bows respectfully to the appraiser before taking his leave. Now armed with his new creations, he strolls through the academy, ready for his next challenge with the infamous Ma Guangsu. But as he opens the door to a training room, he finds someone already inside, practicing alone. It's Jake Myers, brother of the Academy's champion, who is startled by Sehun's sudden appearance. As Sehun offers to leave, Jake desperately tells him to wait, a look of panic on his face. He awkwardly asks for a favor, a hopeful smile plastered on his face as he faces the master blacksmith. Sehun, however, shuts him down instantly with a cold, blunt refusal before he can even finish his sentence. He already knows the request that Jake's sister sent him, and coldly tells him to give up on ever getting a weapon from him. Sehun knows he can't create a weapon for the legendary Arya Myers yet, as anything less than a masterpiece would make her lose interest entirely. But Jake, desperate for his sister, interrupts with a shocking counteroffer. A hero-grade weapon known as the Hammer of Black Flames. Sehun inspects the artifact, recognizing its immense potential, and admitting that it's a worthy prize. Fueled by determination, Jake wagers the priceless hammer on a rematch, demanding Sehun forge a weapon for his sister if he loses. A dangerous glint appears in the blacksmith's eye, as he considers the high-stakes proposal. Instead of simply accepting, Sehun decides to add one more devastating condition of his own. He declares that if he wins, Jake is forbidden from even mentioning his sister for a month, a psychological blow aimed directly at the champion. With the terms set, the two face off again, Jake vowing that he won't be caught by an unexpected counterattack this time. He immediately unleashes a terrifying amount of power, blue energy crackling as he prepares to go all out from the very start. Sehun watches in awe, realizing Jake is compressing enough mana to stop even Yomseonga, proving his true power was hidden all along. But instead of facing Jake's power head-on, Sehun reveals a mysterious crystalline artifact. A system window suddenly appears, deactivating one bond to activate another, instantly optimizing his body's mana to its peak state. He grips a short spear, its crimson blade cutting through the air with a terrifying and practiced ease. Jake watches his opponent's flawless footwork, shocked that the blacksmith is so proficient with a spear. He wonders if this is a hidden skill of a master artisan, the ability to wield any weapon he forges. But Jake scoffs internally, convinced that simple familiarity with a weapon won't be enough to defeat him. He lunges forward with overwhelming force, unleashing a devastating blow meant to end the fight instantly. As their powers collide, Jake declares this victory will be his, but a single, ominous ember begins to ignite. Suddenly, the tide turns as Sehun's crimson spear shatters Jake's attack, leaving the champion in utter disbelief. A fiery phantom of a legendary warrior materializes behind him as he unleashes a secret technique Jake has never seen before. Before he regressed, Sehun had formed a bond with a legendary figure just to gain power. But as they grew closer, they shared forbidden techniques that were never meant to be passed on. Now, even a crude imitation of that forgotten art is more than enough to overwhelm his opponent. With a single, devastating swing of his spear, he unleashes a torrent of flames that completely shatters Jake's stance. The top student panics, realizing he's lost all control of the fight and is being utterly dominated. However, Jake senses a critical weakness. Sehun's overwhelming power isn't natural, but a temporary skill. Believing he can win by simply waiting it out, Jake dodges desperately, trying to stall for time until the skill wears off. But Sehun simply smirks, impressed that even in a corner, Jake's instincts are sharp enough to see through his plan. In a shocking twist, he unleashes a completely new power, channeling the dark, explosive energy from a hidden mana stone. Jake stares in disbelief as Sehun mixes opposing mana types, a suicidal act that should tear him apart from the inside. In a desperate last stand, Jake Myers channels an insane amount of mana into his bare hands. He unleashes his family's ultimate secret art, the Formless Sword, creating a blade from pure energy. A blinding thread of light crashes down, powerful enough to obliterate anything in its path. But Sehun only smirks, completely unimpressed by the supposedly legendary technique. Deciding he can't afford to lose, he unleashes his own forbidden art, the blood-red Eclipse Crescent. The two ultimate attacks collide in a cataclysmic explosion of conflicting red and blue auras. The sheer force of the impact shatters the very arena around them. When the dust settles, Sehun stands completely unharmed, his power having utterly consumed Jake's. The top student can only stare in disbelief as the cold tip of a spear rests against his throat. With his opponent's complete submission, a new bond is forged, another piece of the future falling into Sehun's hands. Sehun coldly questions if their devastating duel could ever be called a simple tie. But the prideful Jake Myers admits his own defeat, acknowledging he used a near-fatal skill and still lost. He grits his teeth in frustration, revealing a strange curse that prevents him from ever using a sword. Jake explains that any blade he holds shatters instantly, a bizarre weakness for a top-tier fighter. He even confesses to breaking a legendary hero-grade sword, a feat that leaves Sehun deep in thought. Suddenly, Sehun's eyes sharpen with understanding as he commands the confused student to hold out his hand. He gives a chilling warning to keep his mana perfectly still, hinting at a dangerous and painful procedure. In an instant, a terrifying dark power erupts from Sehun, his eyes glowing as he prepares to uncover the truth. A wave of raw energy slams into Jake's hand, forcing a pained grunt from the elite student. Then, as a calm blue aura settles, Sehun finally understands the secret, not reinforcement, but a rare power of alteration. A flustered Jake demands an explanation for the painful analysis, but Sehun calmly apologizes for the rough treatment. He then leaves the elite student speechless with a shocking offer to craft him a personal sword. A new system window confirms the extraction of a powerful compression stone from Jake, the key ingredient for an unbreakable blade. But just as he celebrates, a dangerous presence fills the room as the legendary Ma Guangsu appears, forming yet another unexpected bond. The S-rank professor's gaze is deadly serious as he dismisses Jake, demanding a private conversation with Sehun. The heavy door slams shut, leaving the confused air completely cut off from the looming confrontation. Inside, the professor lays out his deep suspicions, questioning how a supposed blacksmith could also possess the skills of a master spearman. Sehun, however, shamelessly reframes the interrogation, proudly claiming the professor is just in awe of his perfect stance. He then demonstrates a cheap trick by manipulating a simple object, leaving the old master utterly baffled by the display. Finally, Sehun reveals a glimpse of his true power, the terrifying ability to perfectly mimic another's body by reconfiguring his own muscles. Sehun casually explains the immense physical strain and limitations of his terrifying mimicry skill. But the old master falls silent, his mind racing as he connects the dots between observation and mimicry. Suddenly, Ma Guangsu apologizes, admitting his suspicion was because Sehun's power mirrors that of a dangerous demon. Hez talking about the doppelganger, one of the 10 evils who copies heroes' techniques just to slaughter them. A painful memory resurfaces, showing the S-rank hero brought to his knees by this very same shape-shifting monster. The deep grudge born from that humiliating defeat burns in his eyes, explaining the very bond that connects them now. Back in the present, the professor realizes he has two choices: suspect Sehun as the enemy, or use him as the ultimate weapon. Sehun smirks, knowing the old master has decided he's far too useful to be a foe. The tense atmosphere shatters as the professor lets out a hearty laugh, completely changing his tune. He then launches into a booming rant about the weakness of modern heroes, with Sehun looking on completely unamused. Professor Ma Guangsu declares that Sehun's unprecedented skill forces him to completely overhaul his teaching methods. He privately wonders how a student with such overwhelming talent could have such a humble background, a clear contradiction he can't ignore. As Sehun walks away, the old master smirks, realizing this mysterious boy will be a fascinating puzzle to unravel. Moments later, Sehun gets a call from the defeated Yom Seonga, who impatiently demands to know what he wants as payment for their duel. The prideful warrior feels uneasy without settling his debt, but Sehun casually dismisses his urgency as exhausting. He then pivots, asking about a mysterious blacksmith named Louise Valent, a name that clearly catches Seonga off guard. Seonga scoffs at the request, reminding Sehun that he's broke and powerless within the exclusive Flameflower Gate. But Sehun confidently tells him to just trust his methods and wait, hanging up before the warrior can argue further. His thoughts then drift to his true target, Louise Valent, the explosive dog, a ticking time bomb he never knew in his past life. He recalls that a past injury is the key to her instability, believing he can intervene at just the right moment as his phone suddenly buzzes again. The call comes in, and Sehun is stunned to learn his target has already been located. He listens to the tragic tale of Louise Valent, a top cadet whose future was shattered when her own wand exploded. But a crucial detail clicks into place: her dangerous personality only emerged after the incident, giving him a perfect opening. His informant confirms she's stuck in rehabilitation with no progress, and that the full file is on its way. Just then, his train of thought is broken by Jake Myers, who excitedly calls out to him from behind a pillar. The eager student rushes over, desperate to continue their talk about his sword, completely unaware of the deadly game Sehun is playing. Sehun pivots, showing Jake the case file and asking if he recognizes the two powerful names tied to the explosion. Jake confirms their identities, revealing they're from elite families connected to the all-powerful Noblesse network. Seeing his chance, Sehun makes an unbelievable offer. Investigate these two, and he'll forge a new sword in a single week. The desperate boy immediately agrees to do anything, and Sehun, with his new pawn secured, begins to lay his trap. With a maniacal grin, Jake makes an insane request: for Sehun to break his arm, and Sehun, ever the manipulator, coldly agrees to do it as cleanly as possible. The scene then shifts to Asuka's General Hospital, where a life-altering tragedy is unfolding. Inside, a team of researchers can only watch in stunned silence as the test begins. Their subject, a once promising cadet named Louise Vallant, takes a deep, steadying breath. Known as the infamous explosive dog, she declares the start of her 159th trial. She unleashes a devastating wave of power with her signature lava bullet technique. But in an instant, a catastrophic failure erupts from within her own body. Her mana turns against her, causing an agonizing internal collapse that makes her scream. The system confirms a fatal mana backflow, the very incident that sealed her tragic fate. Her body collapses as the mana freeze takes hold, the trauma of her past threatening to consume her once again. Immediately, the head researcher orders the experiment halted, calling for emergency neutralizers to stop the catastrophic reaction. But Louise forces herself to stand, insisting through the pain that she is fine and can continue the trial. The professor coldly shuts her down, declaring that not only are they finished, but her rehabilitation will be severely limited. Her world shatters when he reveals they are demoting her training all the way back to the beginner level. Desperately, she stumbles forward, begging him to reconsider his crippling decision. As medical staff begin to carry her away, she pleads for just one more chance to prove herself. Her pleas then turn to raw defiance, screaming that she can do it as she resists their hold. In a final, desperate burst of strength, she breaks free and lunges forward, her voice cracking with sheer willpower. But her struggle ends in an instant as a tranquilizer pierces her neck, forcing her into a defeated silence. A new day begins in the quiet sterility of the Academy Hospital, but Louise Vallant awakens with a cold fire burning in her eyes. Lying in her bed, she can only curse the humiliating end to her desperate struggle. Regret floods her mind as she realizes her emotional outburst only made her situation worse. But her despair quickly turns to resolve. If the system has failed her, she'll find another way. As she tries to stand, she's suddenly sent reeling by a painful collision with a stranger. Clutching her injured nose, she angrily demands to know who could be so careless. But the man who stands before her is none other than Lee Sehun, whose glowing yellow eyes promise nothing but trouble. Suddenly, the scene flashes to a terrifying memory of chaos as air raid sirens blare over a scene of destruction. It's a vision of the past he's trying to prevent from happening once again, and this girl is somehow the key. The memory of a near-fatal encounter still haunts him, as he recalls desperately fleeing and swearing vengeance on his betrayers. Back then, the city was rocked by the arrival of the infamous explosive dog, who descended from the sky with chilling purpose amidst the chaos. Sehun could only watch, instantly assessing the woman as an A-class mastermind behind the terror. In that critical moment, their eyes met as the mysterious figure challenged his intense stare. Suddenly, the memory shatters as Louise Vallant confronts him in the present with those very same words. Enraged, she demands an apology, completely unaware of the man she's just bumped into. But instead of apologizing, Sehun grabs her arm with an unsettling firmness. He coldly tells her to lie down if she's sick, his calm demeanor hiding a terrifying agenda. Despite her weakness, Louise seethes with fury, silently cursing her broken body as Sehun offers to help her back to her room. With no other choice, she reluctantly allows him to escort her down the hospital corridor. Once inside her room, he calmly asks if she needs anything, his presence looming over her. Coughing, she directs him to a small black case in her drawer, which she then takes into her hands. He urges her to use whatever is inside so she can recover. But she just snaps back, telling him to mind his own business. She brings an inhaler to her lips, taking a deep breath that seems to momentarily soothe her condition. But Sehun's eyes flash with a sudden intensity as he accuses her of harming herself, leaving her completely stunned. He calls her treatment complete nonsense, his calm demeanor now replaced with a chilling certainty. He reveals a terrifying truth. The very inhaler she relies on is actually worsening her condition, its sinister green aura now visible. Louise freezes in shock, her mind reeling as she realizes the medicine she trusted might be a slow-acting poison. Louise demands to know what he's talking about, but Sehun calmly confirms his terrifying accusation. Suddenly, a hospital-wide announcement summons Lee Sehun to the nursing station, interrupting their tense standoff. As he prepares to leave, Louise calls out, finally asking if he is the infamous Lee Sehun. He confirms his identity and tries to warn her one last time, only to be harshly cut off. With a face full of contempt, she screams that she has nothing to say to a lowly blacksmith and tells him to get out. Respecting her wishes for now, Sehun simply turns and exits her room without another word. Alone in the darkness, she curses the very blacksmith she just dismissed, revealing her deep-seated trauma. But as he stands in the hallway, a system window suddenly appears, announcing that a bond with Louise has now been formed. Still reeling from this unexpected development, Sehun finds himself in an office where an administrator calmly reviews his case. The man confirms his arm is just a simple fracture with no mana circuit damage, prompting Sehun to ask when he can be discharged. The doctor recommends another week of rest, but Sehun knows he has up to 2 weeks to execute his plan. His mind races, realizing this is his only window to get close to Louise and reverse the damage to her mana circuit. But above all else, he must deal with the sinister mana eroder that's slowly killing her. Seizing the opportunity, he casually asks the doctor if he knows Louise, who confirms she is one of his patients. With a calculated expression, he begins to spin a story, claiming he saw her collapse in the hallway after trying to use magic. He adds that she begged him to keep it a secret, but his conscience forced him to report the dangerous incident. The doctor, completely fooled, dismisses him, and a sinister smile spreads across Sehun's face as his plan falls perfectly into place. The very next morning, the stage is set for the next phase of his scheme. Wasting no time, he makes a call to his new pawn, Jake Myers. As Jake picks up, Sehun immediately gets down to business, demanding the information he needs to move forward. Jake reports back to Sehun over the phone, revealing he's uncovered a dark conspiracy. The plot centers around Babel's Ivory Tower, a sponsorship foundation with absolute control over the students' futures. He explains that years ago, a promising cadet named Gotts was competing for a scholarship directly against Louise Valent. But right before the final selection match, a weapon provided by the Barmut family mysteriously exploded, taking Louise completely out of the running. The pieces click into place, exposing a sinister plot between Gotts and powerful figures to orchestrate her downfall. As Sehun probes for more details, Jake recalls another strange piece of the puzzle. He mentions a professor who conveniently stepped in to help Louise after her accident and continues to sponsor her even now. Though the story sounds heartwarming on the surface, Sehun knows something is deeply wrong and tells Jake he has enough information. Before hanging up, a terrified Jake begs him to call off his new allies, who have been giving him death glares around campus. With the call ended, Sehun walks the hospital halls, his mind racing as he plans his next move to expose the truth. Sehun's scheming is interrupted by an unexpected knock on his hospital room door. When the visitor claims to be the person he helped, he tears the door open with explosive force. Inside, he slams the disgraced cadet, Louise Valent, against the wall with cold fury in his eyes. She immediately explodes with rage, screaming curses at the man who ruined her life. Yet Sehun feigns confusion, calmly watching as she spirals into a desperate panic. In a flashback, her doctor confirms her worst fears. The rehabilitation failed, and she needs to start over. Louise screams that his meddling has just erased half a year of agonizing work. Cutting through her rage, he asks if she used the suspicious inhaler, which she furiously denies. Seeing his opening, Sehun makes a shocking declaration that he will personally fix her incurable mana burns. She can only laugh in disbelief, but he simply smirks, telling her the impossible is about to become reality. Louise coldly challenges him to speak his nonsense, completely unconvinced by his impossible promise. But Sehun simply reaches into a nearby drawer, calmly stating they have much to discuss, and pulls out her prescribed inhaler, demanding to know which professor gave her this medicine. With a chilling smirk, he reveals its true name, the mana eroder. Before she can even question him, his S-rank skill activates, preparing to show her the horrifying truth directly. He explains that her mana circuit was originally stable, like a simple electrical wire. But as green energy flares around his own neck, he reveals the inhaler created a fatal power mismatch within her body. This caused a catastrophic overload that completely shattered her ability to channel mana from the inside. The horrifying realization finally hits Louise as she clutches her throat. Her career wasn't lost, it was stolen. And a damning flashback reveals the very words that sealed her fate, promising a cure that was actually a curse. A memory surfaces of Louise, thanking the very man who would orchestrate her downfall, as he places a hand on her shoulder, feigning concern for her future. Kim In-cheol's words echo in her mind, a cruel promise to overcome her burns while encouraging her to never give up. And with a hopeful smile, she unknowingly accepted her own destruction. But returning to the present, the full weight of the conspiracy crashes down on her. It was all an act. Rage finally boils over as she swears to make the man who ruined her pay for his treachery. Sehun smirks, seeing the fire he wanted, but immediately tempers her hope by stating he can't actually fix her damaged mana circuits. However, he offers a tantalizing alternative. He can't repair her, but he can adjust her body to wield magic once more. Immediately suspicious, Louise cuts to the chase, demanding to know the price for this impossible miracle. With his eyes glowing with hidden power, Sehun claims his price is small, a statement that promises anything but. Sehun's price is finally revealed, a promise to help him conquer the 6 great demon realms in the future. He presents her with a life-altering choice: trust him and change her fate, or do nothing and waste away. After a tense moment of consideration, a confident smile spreads across her face as she makes her decision. With renewed determination, Louise extends her hand to seal their pact, warning him not to dare back out. Their handshake solidifies a dangerous new alliance, binding their futures together in a shared gamble. Without a moment's rest, Sehun immediately presents what he calls the first tool for her training. But Louise is left utterly speechless, finding the bag is filled with nothing more than common cherries. He begins his lesson by confirming her condition. The pain only comes when she circulates refined mana. Sehun explains that, while normal energy flows freely, the refined mana required for magic is what's actively destroying her body. The impossible solution is then demonstrated as her throat glows with power, revealing she refines the volatile mana directly on her tongue. Louise is in disbelief, questioning how she could possibly do anything with her mana circuits nearly gone. But Sehun confidently points at her, insisting that while others failed, she is the only one who can succeed. He then reveals his secret knowledge from a forgotten future. This is the exact method she used to earn the fearsome title of Mad Dog. Intrigued by this impossible truth, her skepticism gives way to a flicker of hope as she asks him to explain the plan. Sehun begins the lesson, revealing the first step is to use simple cherries to train the latent mana circuits inside her mouth. He then demonstrates the bizarre basic form, pointing to his tongue as the key to her impossible recovery. As he performs the strange exercise, he instructs her to gently control the mana flow on her tongue and bind it. Louise can only stare in disbelief, her inner thoughts screaming that Sehun isn't a genius, he's just completely insane. Her frustration boils over as the training forces her to shout with all her might, infusing her voice with raw emotion and mana. This bizarre session culminates in reciting complex tongue twisters, leaving a passing administrator utterly bewildered by the madness in her room. Louise is forced through a bizarre and frustrating training method, biting a rod to perfect her pronunciation. But just 1 week later, she's in absolute shock as she realizes the insane method actually worked. Sehun smirks confidently, reminding her that for the original Mad Dog, this level of training is nothing. Her brief moment of triumph shatters as she grabs her head in a wave of sudden frustration. She screams that all this has done is fix her voice, questioning what any of it has to do with her shattered mana. Overwhelmed by hopelessness, she apologizes, admitting that for a moment, it all felt pointless. Sehun remains completely unfazed, simply telling her it's time to move on to the next step. He then finally reveals the true purpose of her vocal training: to refine her mana for something called word magic. The name of this forgotten power hits her like a lightning bolt as Sehun tells her to watch him carefully. He begins his lesson, explaining that word magic requires 2 things: a core of mana and the absolute will to manifest it into reality. Louise concentrates. Learning the key to this ancient power is a crystal-clear mental image, and to demonstrate, Sehun speaks the word sphere, causing a ball of pure mana to instantly materialize in the room. But this is just the beginning, as he prepares to mold the basic form into something far more lethal. With a single thought, the sphere transforms and infuses with a destructive attribute, shocking Louise with its raw potential. He then stacks another infusion, accelerating the spell to unimaginable speeds, with terrifying, piercing power. The completed spell erupts from the room, a devastating beam of energy that shatters the window in an instant. Yet just as quickly, he commands it to disperse, and the immense power vanishes into thin air without a trace. Realizing he got a little too carried away, Sehun stares at the shattered remains of the hospital window. He turns with a casual smile, calmly offering to pay for the damages he just caused with a god-tier spell. Completely misunderstanding his terrifying focus, a bewildered Louise can only ask if he's angry with her. Louise, with glowing eyes, manifests her very first sphere of pure magic since her circuits were destroyed. Sehun watches with satisfaction, realizing she perfectly copied his spell after seeing it just once. He pushes her further, commanding her to rebuild the shattered window with her newfound power. With a knowing smirk, he explains that magic is a force that ignores the very laws of the world, and as Louise listens in shock, he reveals that a powerful will can even ignore the laws of magic itself. As this truth sinks in, she touches her scarred neck and realizes the constant pain has vanished. A dangerous, ecstatic smile spreads across her face as she finally feels the flow of mana again. Sehun tells her it's okay to let her emotions out, but her resolve is now like steel. Her eyes burn with hatred as she vows not to cry until she destroys the men who ruined her life. Seeing this burning desire for vengeance, Sehun knows she's ready for the next step of his plan. Louise, now burning with resolve, asks Sehun what their next move is. He reveals a phone screen, ready to register her for a program ominously titled Overcoming Trauma. Meanwhile, at the brutal Ivory Tower mock training ground, a fierce battle is already raging. Inside, a team of freshmen desperately fights against a single, impossibly strong enemy. The hooded skeleton warrior effortlessly deflects their attacks, its power on a completely different level. One student is sent flying as an arrogant senior watches from above with utter contempt. He scoffs, disappointed that not a single one of the freshmen this year is worth anything. With a wave of his hand, he dismisses the defeated student and the terrifying skeleton. But as the challengers are dragged away, he gets a call asking about all the commotion. The scene cuts to his target, Gotts Kruger, who is being informed that a new challenge has just been posted for him on the public board. A new challenge suddenly appears on the public board, posted by a mysterious user known only as Grey Rat. Gotts Kruger explodes in pure rage, slamming his fist down as he realizes who's behind this public humiliation. He reads the message from his long-lost rival, Louise Valent, the woman whose career he thought he had destroyed. The news spreads like wildfire as students see Louise's claim that she has recovered her mana circuits and is now demanding a rematch. But back in the hospital, the true mastermind, Lee Sehun, watches as a terrified Louise posts the challenge he wrote, goading Gotts to either fight or admit his cowardice. Pushed past his breaking point, Gotts shatters his phone, utterly enraged by the taunt to die if he's scared. With a cold, murderous glare, he vows to not just defeat her, but to beat her so badly she can never stand again. Meanwhile, the reality of the situation finally hits Louise, who turns to Sehun and asks if he's completely insane. Sehun just casually dismisses her panic, acting as if he didn't just push her into a life-or-death battle. She completely loses her composure, screaming that this is impossible since her magic is barely at a beginner's level and she stands no chance. Her suspicion boils over as she accuses him of being a spy, but Sehun calmly reveals this is all part of a calculated plan. He explains that her magic isn't gone, but sealed away by the subconscious fear born from that devastating incident. This duel, he claims, is the only way for her to overcome her trauma, demanding she place her trust in him. Louise, however, can only see the downside, pointing out that another crushing defeat would shatter her spirit completely. But her doubt is met with cold resolve as he clenches his fist, ordering her to stop her nonsensical worrying. He then leans in with absolute certainty, promising she can't lose while a system window reveals a new bond has just been forged between them. As proof, he reveals an impossibly rare, supreme-grade dying waterstone he's acquired just to craft her new weapon. The sheer scale of his preparation leaves her stunned, her fear finally giving way to a glimmer of hope. With her resolve completely transformed, a confident smile spreads across her face as she asks what training comes next. But Sehun's plan takes a mysterious turn, as he simply replies, their next step isn't training, but an examination. With a sinister resolve, Sehun pulls on a black glove as his true plan finally begins to unfold. He then reveals their next step is a shocking oral examination, leaving his new ally utterly bewildered by his methods. Meanwhile, across campus, rumors begin to swirl about the suspicious timing of Louise's so-called accident. The whispers quickly turn to conspiracy, suggesting the prestigious Barmut and Kruger families colluded to eliminate their top rival. But high above, Gotts Kruger, the very student who benefited from her downfall, watches the gossipers with utter contempt. He's then seen taking a call from his brother, being furiously berated for letting the situation spiral out of his control. His mind flashes to the terrifying power of his father, knowing any direct intervention would spell the end of his own ambitions. Frustrated and cornered, he hangs up the phone only to be interrupted by a new voice calling his name. It's Pierre Barmut, the heir of the very family implicated in the conspiracy, greeting him with a venomous smile. Enraged, Gotts confronts him demanding answers, but Pierre just sits back silently as the tension skyrockets. Pierre Barmut angrily confronts Gotts, accusing him of changing their simple plan to frame Louise. Cornered, Gotts admits his mistake, but furiously demands a solution before their entire conspiracy collapses. He delivers a chilling ultimatum. If he goes down, he's dragging the Barmut heir out of the line of succession with him. But Pierre simply smiles with unnerving confidence, telling him not to worry about a thing. A splash of blood hints at his true intentions, as he reveals a final, brutal way to handle the situation for good. Elsewhere, Lee Sehun examines a corrupted bond stone, noting it's completely different from the one he remembers from his past life. With a surge of his power, he purifies the gem, realizing the once unyielding material is now adapting to him. The stone becomes a malleable, glowing substance in his hands, making him wonder if Hez just unlocked its true hidden potential. Just as he realizes he can craft an even greater weapon than he imagined, Louise Valent enters the room, surprised to see his cast is off. She eyes the glowing material suspiciously, but Sehun calmly tells her to sit down, for the time has come to forge her future. Following Sehun's command, Louise pours her raw, unrefined mana directly into the core before her. Sehun notes how much easier this is than in his past life, preparing to draw out the material's true, hidden power. With a single motion, the glowing alloy flattens into a perfect, shimmering metallic sheet. He then begins the impossible feat of engraving her entire complex mana circuit onto the plate, a technique that leaves Louise in silent shock. His fingers move with inhuman speed and precision, flawlessly etching the complex network in mere seconds. The forging is finished in an instant, and a small, unassuming blue orb now rests in Louise's hand. He calmly instructs her to place the newly created core onto the center of the engraved plate. As the two pieces connect, a brilliant surge of energy erupts from the point of contact. The power explodes outwards in a blinding flash, flooding the newly forged circuits with an overwhelming blue light. Louise is left speechless as an impossible list of high-tier abilities are imprinted into the device, creating a temporary masterpiece that defies all logic. The cosmic energy of 73 magic sigils swirls around them as Sehun coolly admires the beautiful, raw power he's just created. In a flash of light, the plates assemble into a high-grade weapon named Vargur, a tool Louise thought she'd never wield again. Eager to test her newfound strength, she asks for a trial run, but Sehun warns that its power is already far beyond her control. Just as Sehun steps into the hall, a hospital administrator walks by, completely unaware of the cataclysm about to unfold behind him. Suddenly, a massive explosion of mana erupts from the room, blasting the unsuspecting man down the entire corridor. Dazed and confused, the administrator looks up to see the two patients standing calmly amidst the very wreckage he just escaped. Louise sheepishly apologizes, admitting that was the absolute weakest she could make the blast, confirming the terrifying power of Sehun's creation. A week later, Gotts Kruger and his cronies wait confidently in Nohak Hall, having set a public trap for the supposedly crippled Louise. They mock her condition, wondering if the broken girl can even still use magic, completely oblivious to the monster she's about to face. Back in the waiting room, Louise pushes Sehun away, but he knows, beneath her tough exterior, she's terrified and needs him for the fight ahead. As Sehun walks through the academy hall, a piercing sound only he can hear cuts through the noise of the crowd. A chilling realization hits him. It's the same resonance from a previous incident, and he knows instantly that they're targeting Louise. He sprints down a deserted hallway, pinpointing the source of the danger to a storage room right beside her. Without a second's hesitation, he shatters the door, kicking it clean off its hinges to get inside. There, he finds the source of the sound, a single, ominous box placed in the center of the dark room. But as he stares at it, a familiar voice echoes from his past, coldly mocking his pointless dream. Sehun freezes, a flicker of shock crossing his face as he recognizes the voice of someone he thought he'd left behind. Suddenly, he's pulled into a glitching, traumatic memory of his former master, the S-rank hero known as the Weapon Eater. In this vision of the past, she stands before him, dismissing his desperate plan to save everyone as a childish charade. The memory expands to a scene of utter carnage, revealing his master scoffing at his attempt to turn back time with a mere dagger, the very failure that has haunted him for 31 years. His master's voice continues to mock him, calling him a stubborn disciple, and she explains that dreams are like a poisoned chalice, meaningless once you awaken. The vision glitches and distorts as she screams at him to face reality and accept his failure. But Sehun snaps back, standing his ground, and telling the vision it's gotten one thing wrong. He declares his true master would never be so verbose just to tell him to die. And with that realization, he shatters the illusion with a single, decisive punch. The entire nightmare shatters like glass, breaking the mental attack completely, revealing the true source of the assault, a strange, glowing device. Snapped back to reality, Sehun seethes with rage, furious that someone dared to impersonate his master. Suddenly, a system window appears granting him a new skill, one he's never seen before even after regressing. Sehun ignores his newly acquired skill, focusing instead on the shattered device responsible for the attack. But as he touches it, a jolt of energy surges through him, triggering a painful memory from his past life. He collapses to the floor, recognizing the distinct magical signature left behind by the device's destruction. It's the Mark of Dawn, a fanatical and extremely dangerous cult that worships magic above all else. A chilling realization hits him. These are the same bastards who had once put a leash on Louise in his original timeline. With only 10 minutes left before her big duel, he wonders if history is about to repeat itself with Louise as the target. The residue from the mental attack still courses through his veins, and he realizes if he's this affected, Louise must be in even greater danger. Meanwhile, Louise hears a strange distortion from the speakers in her waiting room, dismissing it as a technical glitch. But the grating sound only adds to her anxiety, irritating her as she waits for her match to begin. She touches the bandage on her neck, knowing that no matter how much she tries to appear strong, no one would ever believe she was okay in this condition. Louise tries to steel her nerves in the empty room, insisting to herself that everything is okay. But as she stares at her reflection, she can only feel that her determination is pathetic. When suddenly, a horrifying sensation grips her as a phantom curse mark flares to life around her scar. The mental attack overwhelms her, making her feel that in the end, nothing about her has truly changed. As blood trickles from her lips, she questions her very existence while the assault intensifies. A dark vision of Sehun looking down on her floods her mind, embodying her deepest fear of failure, whispering that she doesn't want to let him down. Her strength finally gives out, and she collapses to the floor. But in that very instant, the door is kicked open as Sehun bursts in to snap her out of it. Louise looks up from the ground in utter shock, wondering how he could possibly be here. He breathes a heavy sigh of relief, thankful that he managed to arrive before any more of the cult's traps could activate. Sehun snaps Louise out of her daze, asking if she heard the same strange noise he did. He confirms it was an enemy trap, a device he had to smash on his way to her room. This vile machine was designed to agitate her corrupted mana and weaponize her own trauma against her. Louise finally understands the source of her sudden breakdown, realizing it was a calculated mental attack. But she still feels pathetic for being so easily played just hours after vowing to fight back. Instead of comforting her, Sehun brutally agrees, calling her a pathetic letdown for cowering after talking so big. He continues his verbal assault, telling her she could always run away since everyone already knows she's lost once before. He twists the knife further, saying at least she can use her trauma as a convenient excuse for her inevitable failure. As he relentlessly mocks her deepest fear of being publicly humiliated again, her shame finally boils over into pure rage. His provocation finally hits its mark, causing her to snap and scream for the bastard to shut the hell up. Pushed beyond her breaking point, Louise finally snaps, grabbing Sehun and screaming what he could possibly know about her pain. She furiously demands to know who he is to call her pathetic and brush off her trauma like it's absolutely nothing. But even as she holds him, a wave of true desperation begins to creep through her rage. With tears in her eyes, she confesses that she's barely holding herself together, trying not to run away from it all. In a final, desperate gambit, she declares that if she loses this duel, he will take full responsibility for her failure. Sehun, with a small smirk despite his bloody lip, simply agrees that he will. Louise is left completely speechless, stunned into silence by his immediate and unwavering confidence. His entire demeanor then shifts as he softly assures her that he doesn't fight battles he can't win, and she won't be losing to some third-rate nobody. He tells her there are only two things she needs to do: trust him until the very end, and on the day of the duel, unleash everything she has to rip her opponent apart. Gotts Kruger stands confidently, mocking Louise with a powerful hero-class weapon, believing her injuries make her helpless. But as the match is announced, Louise Vallant steps forward, her hooded figure a silent promise of defiance. In this moment, everything feels different. The scar on her neck and the man who gave it to her seem so much smaller now. A countdown begins as a brilliant blue aura erupts from her body, signaling she's been waiting for this chance at revenge. Gotts's smug expression shatters into disbelief, unable to comprehend how a broken mage is channeling such immense mana. As the countdown hits one, she pleads with the device Sehun gave her to just hold on a little longer. Panicked by her impossible power surge, Gotts screams for his shadowy minions to kill her on the spot. Unfazed, Louise prepares her counter, her voice echoing as she sets her own devastating skill into motion. His skeletal soldiers respond instantly, unleashing a sinister attack known as the Death Bite. But she meets their assault head-on, clenching her fist and unleashing a maelstrom of pure, unadulterated power. Gotts stares in disbelief as his undead soldier shatters at his feet, realizing this makes no sense at all. Refusing to accept defeat, he desperately tries to channel his mana back into his broken staff, but he's instantly slammed by a devastating follow-up attack that sends him reeling across the arena. He clutches his neck in agony, knowing only the arena's safety system just saved his life. Enraged, he curses his informant for the faulty intel on her supposedly ruined mana circuits. He looks up to see Louise looming over him, protected by a barrier he can't possibly break. Overwhelmed by sheer terror, he throws up his hand, desperately trying to scream his surrender. But a magical seal instantly clamps around his arm, cutting off his plea for mercy. Now completely immobilized by her power, he can only watch as his fate is sealed. With cold, glowing eyes, she reaches out, ready to deliver her final, devastating judgment. With a final, brutal move, Louise unleashes her revenge bite, draining her opponent's very life force. From the shadows, Lee Se-hoon's eyes glow with satisfaction as his intricate plan unfolds perfectly. Gotts Kruger stumbles forward, his strength completely shattered by the overwhelming attack. He collapses onto the cold floor, utterly defeated, as Louise is declared the undeniable winner. In the crowd, Jake Myers and the other students can only stare in disbelief at the one-sided slaughter. She stands alone in the silent arena, a monument to vengeance surrounded by her fallen enemies. Her icy gaze sweeps over the battlefield, showing not a single hint of mercy. With her opponent at her feet, she sends a clear and terrifying message of absolute dominance. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the sterile, quiet halls of a high-tech medical facility. Inside, Gotts lies broken, his mana circuits permanently destroyed, robbing him of his entire future. While the defeated Gotts lies comatose, two powerful figures discuss the serious complaints piling up from his failure. The younger brother, Michael Barmett, can only offer a quiet apology for the disastrous result, but his older brother Hans is unimpressed, demanding to know how he plans to fix this mess. Michael reveals his plan to handle Louise Vallant once she's inside the ivory tower. He then proposes using the upcoming subjugation practice to eliminate Lee Se-hoon, asking for his brother's help. Hans agrees to provide the necessary support, and Michael gratefully accepts the offer. But just as the deal is struck, Hans's expression twists into a cold, menacing grin. He delivers a chilling ultimatum: fail again, and all rights to succession will be forfeited. Trapped by the threat, Michael's shadow clenches as he is forced to accept the high-stakes condition. The grim conversation ends, leaving him to stare down at the broken pawn who started it all. With Gotts Kruger lying comatose, Michael Barmett can only think of the man responsible for it all, Lee Se-hoon. Meanwhile, Se-hoon himself is calmly analyzing a new, unsettling skill called Awakening Dream. He questions if this is a newly developed talent as his mind is flooded with visions of a past massacre, and the skill suddenly activates. In a flash of insight, his eyes snap open with dawning comprehension. He finally understands its function, realizing it's a powerful mental barrier. But just as he considers its potential, Louise Vallant unexpectedly appears behind him. She coldly demands to know what he's doing just sitting there. Unfazed, Se-hoon simply replies that he was meditating, much to her confusion. She sits down, clearly still recovering, and explains that she's stuck with medical tests for the entire week. She gratefully reflects on how much Se-hoon has helped her over the past 6 months, causing her thoughts to drift back to a tense meeting from only yesterday. She had been summoned by a professor who congratulated her on regaining her magic. He dangled the prestigious Ivory Tower scholarship as a gift, a tempting offer she immediately refused. Instead, with unwavering resolve, she announced her plan to transfer to the martial arts department. The professor listened silently, his expression unreadable as she explained her new magic was incompatible with her old life. He seemingly accepted her decision, telling her the offer would remain open if she changed her mind. But in reality, that entire conversation was an agonizing test of her will. It took every ounce of her strength to suppress the boiling rage and kill the man who orchestrated her downfall on the spot. Se-hoon reassures Louise that she's suffered enough holding it all in, before revealing the truth behind her tragedy: a shadowy cult known as the Watchers, a group of lunatics containing a fanatical sect of mages called Dawn. He confirms his suspicion that they were the ones who ruined her life, turning her into a disposable puppet. Hearing this, Louise finally opens up about her own crippling despair from the past. She recalls lying helpless in a hospital bed, believing she was powerless and would soon be expelled. The thought of revenge felt impossible, a bleak future that forced her to hide from the world in fear. But now, looking back at her past self, she realizes just how foolish her hopelessness was. And looking at the man who changed everything, she admits that thanks to him, she finally has a reason to fight. Louise reflects on her past despair, realizing meeting Se-hoon was the one fateful encounter that changed everything. Back in the present, she struggles to find the right words, finally offering her sincere thanks for his help. Her genuine gratitude immediately triggers a system alert, leveling up their bond and deepening their connection. Se-hoon is momentarily stunned, never expecting the infamous explosive dog to show such a vulnerable side. Suddenly flustered, Louise tries to leave, but he stops her, demanding she return the powerful device she used. She touches the artifact on her neck, explaining it was broken from the overload during her duel. But when he casually asks why he should give it back, her entire demeanor instantly changes. A sly and confident smile spreads across her face as she challenges his question. With a triumphant blush, she boldly declares that the priceless item is hers now. Just as Se-hoon is settling in, his new pawn Jake Myers excitedly appears at the door. He eagerly announces has gathered all the rare materials Sehun requested for his new weapon. But Jake is immediately stunned by the impossible mountain of assignments piled on Sehun's desk. Sehun casually dismisses 2 weeks of work as a one-day task, showcasing his otherworldly efficiency. With his priorities straight, he leads the bewildered boy away to begin the forging process. They arrive at Sehun's surprisingly ordinary room, which Jake had expected to be far more grand. Sehun gestures towards a shelf filled with shimmering cores and rare magical components. His eyes lock onto the prize, a top-tier water golem core, a completely liquid material. As Jake asks how anyone could forge a sword from water, Sehun cryptically states that first, it must mature. Sehun activates his unique forging art, white light style, his eyes glowing with otherworldly power, as he focuses his immense energy on the liquid water golem core, beginning the impossible process of maturation. With a level of control that shouldn't be possible, he refines his mana into a precise, razor-thin stream, while Jake can only stare in disbelief as the water's surface warps under Sehun's touch, radiating pure energy. The core pulses with a brilliant light, its power now stabilized and ready for the next phase. But Jake panics when he realizes Sehun intends to push the core beyond its absolute limits. Sehun simply smirks, revealing that overloading the core is precisely the point of his insane objective. He commands Jake to watch as he unleashes a flurry of legendary techniques, synchronizing with the core on a spiritual level. Then, the master blacksmith turns to his stunned apprentice and demands his hand, pulling him directly into the forging itself. Sehun pricks his finger, letting a single drop of his blood fall towards the impossibly refined core. The moment it hits, crimson tendrils erupt through the pure mana, violently infusing the glowing orb. Jake gasps as a bizarre and unfamiliar sensation surges through his entire body. He feels an impossible connection to the core, as if it were his own flesh, just as Sehun commands him to repeat this blood ritual for the next week. Utterly bewildered, Jake demands to know what kind of forbidden process this even is. Sehun coldly explains it's a simple trick to bypass his pawn's inability to control his rare skill. Instead of trying to tame the power, they will instead exploit a fundamental flaw hidden within it. By feeding the core blood, they are deceiving the skill itself into recognizing the future weapon as a part of Jake's body. As the shocking truth finally dawns on him, Sehun casually asks if his new tool has any more questions. Jake admits that while the new method is completely unheard of, he doesn't need to understand it. In fact, despite his initial skepticism, he's now strangely looking forward to the results. As blood drips from his pawn's hand, Sehun coldly confirms he has understood his orders perfectly. With his new tool set in motion, he casually turns and heads off to his next class. Soon after, he arrives at the massive main hall of the Babel refining department. He heads to the Origin of Armaments classroom, expecting something peculiar given the esoteric subject. But he's completely unprepared for the bizarre scene of collapsed students being poked with needles. A sudden voice welcomes him, breaking him from his stunned silence and confusion. The professor, Kim In-cheol, calmly greets him and immediately asks if his body has recovered.